Call this meeting to order. Note that it is 5:03 p.m., December 14th, 2023. I welcome you all to the December 2023 meeting of the Raleigh Historic Development Commission's Certificate of Appropriateness Committee. My name is Wes Tripp. I am chair of the committee. At this time, I'll recognize staff to call the roll.
Rob Allen.
Here.
Wes Tripp.
Here.
John Reese.
Here.
Curtis Casefang.
Here.
Jordan Ryland.
Note that Jordan Ryland is currently not here, but on his way. We do have the quorum present this afternoon. I will advise everyone here to please sign the attendance roster up front if you have not already done so. Agenda and staff reports are available online, and a handout of the meeting procedure is also available. The Certificate of Appropriateness Committee of the Raleigh Historic Development Commission is a city council appointed body which consists of residents of the historic districts, architects, intern architects, architectural consultants, and contractors, as well as attorneys, historians, urban planners, and historic preservationists. At this time, I'd like to recognize each of my fellow commissioners to introduce themselves and highlight their experience. We'll start with Commissioner Casefang and then work our way down the line.
Okay, I'm Curtis Casefang. I live in Oakwood. I've been on the commission, or DRAC, for the last 19 years and done this a little bit.
My name is John Reese. I am a registered architect in the state of North Carolina. I am a resident of the Glenwood, Brooklyn neighborhood, and this is my 4th year on the commission.
Again, my name is Wes Tripp. I'm chair of the committee. I'm an attorney here in Raleigh.
And my name is Francis Raspberry. I'm not a member of the committee, but I am legal counsel to the COA committee.
I'm Rob Allen. This is my 2nd year on the commission, and I'm a resident of the Boylan Heights Historic District and work with an architecture firm locally.
And I'd like to also recognize staff to introduce themselves.
Hello, I am Colette Canane. I have worked with the City of Raleigh for almost 6 years now. I have a master's degree in historic preservation.
Good evening. I'm Erin Morton Pugh. I've worked with the city for 3 years, and I also have a master's in historic preservation.
All right, this time we'll move to approval of the agenda. I would like to make the following revisions to today's agenda. First up, we'll hear from 423 South Blunt Street, then 221 Elm, 502 Polk, and then last 515 Washington. So I make a motion that we approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Next, entertain a motion to waive reading of the minutes of the October 26, 2023 COA committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of adopting the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Staff, were there any minor works approved in the last month?
We approved 11 minor works.
Great, thank you. All right, we're now ready to proceed with the applications. Prior to the meeting, notice has been sent to property owners within 100 feet of the properties in question. Legal ad placed and signage posted at the site. Commission members received a copy of each application, staff reports, and were to have visited each property. Staff reports were made publicly available with the agenda. State law provides that major work applications must be approved in an evidentiary hearing and that persons have an opportunity to address an application if they desire. Evidentiary hearings are conducted in a quasi-judicial format. During the hearing, we receive evidence to determine that proposed changes are not incongruous with the special character of the district or the historic property. We review this evidence against guidelines referenced in the city ordinance before issuing a certificate. Each application is heard in the same way as listed in the meeting procedure handout. The quasi-judicial format of the hearings requires that we be impartial. The written staff reports are evidence presented just as any other evidence and were made available to the committee, the applicants, and the public at the same time. If any of us has had reason to discuss the specific details of an application before today, we will ask to be excused from hearing that application. There is no time limit on testimony, but repetition is discouraged. Because of the quasi-judicial format of our hearings, that is, that the commission hears evidence and then judges whether the change is not incongruous, we are required by North Carolina law to affirm or swear persons that speak before the commission and offer evidence. All speakers will be affirmed at the beginning of each case. This time, I will swear staff in for their presentations. If you please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give on the matters on today's agenda is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Great. Thank you. All right, we're going to go into a brief recess while we wait for Commissioner Ryland. Thank you. call this meeting back to order. We'll proceed with our applications that we have on our agenda. First up is 423 South Blunt Street. This is COA 119, 2023. Before I call the applicant up to begin their presentation, I have a committee statement to make. Certain history regarding this proposed project, the zoning of the subject property, and this COA application warrants a clarifying statement. By application previously filed with the city, the 423 South Blunt property was proposed for a conditional rezoning. Under the submitted conditional rezoning, mixed-use buildings to a maximum height of 12 stories would be permitted. Pursuant to the provisions of the Raleigh Unified Development Ordinance, the Raleigh Historic Development Commission is charged with reviewing and making a recommendation regarding the proposed rezoning of property located in a designated historic district. Accordingly, this rezoning proposal was referred to the full commission for review. Raleigh Historic Development Commission commissioners serving on the Certificate of Appropriateness Committee attended and actively participated in these sessions. Ultimately, RHDC made no official recommendation regarding the rezoning proposal. While the proposed rezoning is still pending, action on that rezoning has been deferred. The owner-developer has elected to file a Certificate of Appropriateness application for this project, scheduled for hearing this evening to be possibly acted on prior to City Council action on the rezoning proposal. Several points regarding law and procedure deserve clarification. First, while several City COA committee members up here today received information on and participated in RHDC meetings regarding the rezoning proposal, RHDC's recommendation is in an advisory capacity. The City Council's decision to rezone or not is legislative in nature. Second, as committee members are well aware, the legal and procedural standards applicable to the committee's consideration of the COA application are distinctly different from the earlier consideration of the rezoning proposal by RHDC. The COA proceeding is, of course, quasi-judicial in nature. The committee members are obligated to wear notably different hats, legally speaking, as they hear and decide the COA application case. Third, although building height may be an important issue in the rezoning proposal and will likely be an important issue in this COA case, the legal criteria applicable to the COA decision under applicable design guidelines are different. Fourth, it will be important for each committee member to understand and acknowledge that any information they previously received regarding the subject property and any commentary they may have offered regarding a recommendation on the rezoning proposal is irrelevant and is not to be considered in this COA proceeding. Only evidence received by the committee at this hearing is to be considered in its decision. I suggest that myself and the fellow committee members who participated in the RHDC's consideration of this rezoning to disclose and acknowledge at the beginning of the evidentiary hearing on COA case 119 the following. As a member of the RHDC, I have participated in the Commission's recent review of the rezoning proposal affecting the 423 South Blunt Street property. I understand and acknowledge that hearings before the COA committee are quasi-judicial in nature and are subject to different legal requirements and criteria for decision-making. I recognize information received and any comments I may have offered regarding the rezoning proposal are irrelevant to the COA process, and I will not consider such information and commentary. In reaching a decision regarding COA case number 119, I will consider only evidence received by the committee at the hearing. Subsequent to the filing of COA case number 119, I have had no ex parte communications regarding the issues to be addressed in this case relating to the property or proposed project or evidence to be presented. I'll ask each of my fellow commissioners to affirm those statements.
I'll affirm the statement.
I do.
Confirmed.
Yeah, I affirm.
I'd also like to ask the applicant and any other witnesses if they have any objection to the committee members proceeding on this application? I see a shake. No, you're good? All right, thank you. All right, with that out of the way, I will now ask the applicant to come forward. And anyone who will be presenting on behalf of the applicant. Please introduce yourselves.
Good evening, Chair Tripp and members of the committee. Letitia Shapiro, attorney at Morningstar Law Group, 421 Fayetteville Street, Suite 530. I'm here on behalf of the applicant owner, Blunt Property Partners, LLC, and I'm joined this evening by other members of the applicant team, my colleague Molly Stewart of Morningstar Law Group, and Mr. Sohail Alawar. And as always, Colette, were you going to go through your presentation first, and then I'll just go ahead and introduce Sohail? Just say hello.
Good evening, committee. Thank you for having us here.
Let me go ahead and swear you in before we begin.
Yes, sir.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great, thank you. And before you begin, I'll go ahead and recognize staff for their presentation, and then the applicant will have the floor to make your presentation.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You want us to?
All right, as you mentioned, this is case COA 119-2023 for 423 South Blunt Street. This is located in the Prince Hall Historic District, and the nature of the request is to construct a 12-story primary structure, construct a courtyard, and remove the existing parking lot. You can see the parcel here on the map. It is located near the corner of South Blunt and East Cabarrus. This is a view of the property today from South Blunt Street. It's currently a gravel parking lot. And this is a view from the rear of the property looking back towards South Blunt. This is a view from Cabarrus Street, standing behind the Masonic Temple building, looking back towards the property line, which is here. A very brief summary of the staff concerns contained in the staff report is a need for additional supporting evidence for the setback, height, and fenestration pattern, and typical additional materials and details that are provided prior to or during the construction process. And the applicants did provide a presentation and a packet of information, which I will hand out to you right now.
All right, the applicant, you have the floor for your presentation.
Thank you. As always, Colette has done a great job of describing the nature of the case, so I'm just going to provide some introductory comments. And in a moment, I will call Mr. Sohail Alawar, who's going to provide some expert testimony associated with the findings that you all need to make this evening. The property is located at 423 South Blunt Street on approximately 0.13 acres. It is currently a vacant lot being used for parking. The Prince Hall Masonic Temple building is located directly south of the subject property. The applicant is proposing to construct a hotel on this vacant lot. New construction within the district requires a certificate of appropriateness, and that is why we're here before the committee this evening. The property is located in the northwestern edge of the Prince Hall Historic District. And as you are aware, the Historic Development Commission may approve a certificate of appropriateness upon holding a quasi-judicial hearing pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 160D 947A and UDO Section 10-2-15D4. The applicant will demonstrate through exhibits and testimony of Mr. Sohail Alawar that the proposed new construction meets the requirements of approval set forth in the statute, the ordinance, and the design guidelines for Raleigh historic districts and landmarks as they pertain to the special character of the Prince Hall Historic District. Some of the special characteristics noted in the guidelines that I would like to mention, and of which Mr. Alawar is going to go into more detail, include Blunt Street. South Blunt Street in particular is noted as a commercial corridor within the neighborhood. Buildings adhere to a uniform setback standing near the street on deep, narrow parcels, closely spaced in typical urban fashion that you can see here. Architectural styles specific to commercial buildings include churches in Gothic Revival style with brick veneers and concrete block. The Masonic Temple is a masonry building with a cutaway corner entry, storefront at the street, and segmental arch windows. Other buildings demonstrate that cutaway corner entry, such as the building located at 600 South Blunt Street here. And smaller businesses are either concrete block construction or brick exteriors, as you can see in this picture as well, and here. Clear that. Guideline 3.3, new construction of primary buildings, provides that the introduction of compatible but contemporary new construction can add depth and contribute interest to the district. And in addition, new buildings should take design cues from, but not copy historic buildings. Guideline 3.5, non-residential new construction, provides that new construction in an urban character historic district will be compatible if it reinforces the space defined by the surrounding contributing buildings. The buildings from form, fenestration, and relationship to the street as perceived by the pedestrian is critical to maintaining the special character of the district. The competent material and substantial evidence provided to you this evening will demonstrate congruity as required by North Carolina Statute 160D 947A and UDO Section 10-2-15D4E through exhibits and expert testimony describing how the project is compatible with the district as it relates to the adjacent buildings, the location of the subject property within the district, and as it relates to other nearby buildings. The applicant's proposed project complies with several relevant guidelines as they relate to the legal standards of the UDO and North Carolina statute. I would now like to invite Mr. Sohail Alawar down to introduce himself, which he's already done, and go ahead and make his presentation.
Hello once again. I wanted to just begin with a few thoughts.
Could you move the microphone a little closer to your
Closer?
mouth?
Yeah.
And I think you can bend it up too.
Bend it?
Yeah.
Right there. Perfect. So a couple of thoughts before we begin. I want to say I come in the room with an open mind. I know how important this is for the neighborhood. I know that the design will have, as design, we all have different approach to design. And I know that I'm here, I just want to let you know that I'm here with open to thoughts, ideas, and criticism. I feel like I'm back in School of Design a little bit, but coming from a city like Beirut, I was born in Beirut, which was destroyed with war, 17 years of war. I kind of understand almost like how these neighborhoods where so many buildings have been torn down and so many buildings are left, but there's a lot of open spaces. And I feel like it's almost like taking over after a city's been torn down, and you have to kind of find a language that to fill in and to continue and to build on, and maybe try to preserve what's there and build on it. And I feel like this neighborhood has that same feel. Obviously, there was no war, but it was a lot of demolition, a lot of things that went to waste over the past 50 years. And I think, we're trying to, over the years, we've torn down a lot of important buildings in the city, and I definitely don't want to be the one to do that. So I want to build on that and help push forward basically new ideas, new language, maybe new architecture to push forth with this. So having said that, I care a lot about preservation. I care about this place, and I want to know what, I want to see this place 20, 30, 100 years from now, what it would look like. So to start, I'm going to give you my first thoughts and approach to the design. So the first thing, when I got this piece of land, I sent a message to Ian, knowing that he worked in the archive building, and I said, what was on this lot? This was before I knew that it was even in the historic overlay, just so that I can have some inspiration. He sent me, and it looked like there was a single family home there. And so from there, it was really hard for me to kind of really, I had some ideas about it, but I wasn't really sure where to go from there. But with that thought, so what was historically on this site? How will that help define or influence what my design will be? How can I integrate the corner building into the program of the new building? Because really, being there, it's like I feel like the corner building is the more important part, the Masonic Temple, which the neighborhood is named after. And I think from there, you have to kind of work with it on your own. You can't really work without it. So, as you know, I've been looking to build a boutique hotel for a while, and I've been looking for land. So when I came across this piece of land, I moved quickly, and I thought it was the ideal place to kind of create a very small, kind of jewel-like product that integrates itself into the neighborhood. Obviously, it's a very challenging because it's a small footprint. But once I start looking at sort of what is in downtown Raleigh now in that sort of footprint, one building that comes to mind is the old WTVD building, which is not in the neighborhood, obviously, but where Capitol Club 16 restaurant is. I'm sure everybody's familiar with it. It's a 12-story building on actually a smaller piece of land than this land. It's 0.11 acres, if I'm not mistaken, or 0.10, somewhere in that range. So in that building, you can see that it's a corner. It's got restaurants and offices on the first space. It's got a basement, offices, and the roof, the 12-story, is actually an event space. I was at a wedding there recently. So this was always an inspiration. If you look at the building next door to it, it was a 2-story building where Garland was, and it doesn't really feel odd, even though that you have a 12-story next to a 2-story. It really doesn't feel like, we probably never even noticed it until one mentions it, right? So starting from there, I decided to mirror the existing function of the Masonic Temple to the building that I'm designing. Your first floor of the Masonic Temple has retail. The second floor is an event space. And the third floor is where they meet. So with that, I attempted to do what basically the first floor being a restaurant, the lobby of this hotel. The second floor would be the event space. And working with the Masonic Temple, I was trying to see if we can tie in the two buildings, sort of make a bigger project out of it, And as you all know, I pursued, knowing that I was going to be building a brand new building there, I pursued with the Masonic Temple the idea of getting funding for them to renovate the building, and we were successful at helping them get funding for the existing building, historic building, to get it back up to where it was at its old glory, basically. So with that having said, we have the first floor being the restaurant, the lobby. Second is an event space. And from there, we have 9 stories of rooms, hotel rooms. And the top will be a rooftop bar with a pool. So with the design, the idea was to have desirable rooms, first of all. I mean, when you begin to work on a lot this small, before you even start thinking about what this building is going to look like or how you're going to make it work, you have to kind of deal with many things. One, how are the rooms going to be all desirable? Where would you want to stay in all those rooms? Second, how do you get people in and out of the building safely? Accommodate 2 stairwells, a fire escape that would be accepted by the fire department. Lastly, but quite important, garbage collection. So all those had to be basically figured out before we could even begin to think about what this building going to look like, obviously. So having said that, I started working on the floor plans of the rooms, how to get people in and out, how to safely get people out of the building, how to have access out, and that's where the design began. And from there, it evolved, and that evolution started with this. So here I'll go to the next step, which is the exterior design. And I'd like to I might have to read because it's a lot of things to think about in one point here. So one of the first things I wanted is to not suffocate the existing historic Prince Hall building. So I didn't want a structure that came up right on that building and suffocate it. I felt that the north side of the historic building, even though now it's all shuttered, pretty much mirrored the front and the sides. There was no really front and back to this building. It just feels good from all sides because I think because there was a single family residence next door, nobody ever thought that they're going to build right up onto that building. So There you have windows on the back, you have windows on all sides, and I'd like to, once we renovated those windows, to have a lot of breathing space. Instead of the 10-foot, I extended it to 15 feet, and in some cases 17 feet to make it a little bit more comfortable. So I wanted the courtyard between the two buildings to have a certain setback. It was important because you wanted to, I didn't want it to be an afterthought. You want to be able to sit there, enjoy a meal, have a courtyard there, maybe an alleyway if you wish. Something that is existent in that neighborhood. There are many alleyways, and you can notice in some of the early pictures that we've talked about. And historically, there were a bunch of alleyways, important alleyways in this building. And I like to kind of really make that an important feature. So that to me became the exterior, that the distance between buildings, as I say, is as important as the building itself. Secondly, I feel like the neighborhood has a beginning and an end. Obviously, this is a historic district. There's a beginning to it, and there's an end to it. So looking at that, because we are on the edge of the building, we are like the far northern edge of the historic. We're the first lot, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I wanted it to be like a bookend. So whatever language starts there, it continues through the neighborhood, and maybe it ends with ST Hall. So ST Hall became the end of that sort of completion of the neighborhood. You come into the neighborhood, you come out of the neighborhood. When you leave the neighborhood, you're seeing ST Hall, and I felt that was an inspiration, and it needed to be kind of somehow integrated into the design. The rhythm of the way the windows, the way the porches are in the front. There's a certain grid pattern about it that I really liked. So that was one important thing that we dealt there. So the references there are important. Thirdly, the historic references that were torn down, such as the deaf and blind building, which I really loved. I really wanted to kind of use some of the thoughts in that building. It was more used in terms of scale, rhythm of windows, materials, but I did not think that adding certain elements like turrets in that location would feel part of the context. So I kind of avoided some of the elements in that building. Next, I wanted to create a base for the building that would mirror the Masonic Temple in scale, setback, rhythm and size of window placement, type of windows, sort of wooden windows, setback into the building so that the depth, as we all know, buildings built in the past, the windows don't flush out. There's a lot of depth to the buildings. In this case, you're talking about 7 to 8 inches of depth. So wanted to use that element to do the same thing, have mullions in the building, kind of mirror that whole idea. The cornice line, height of the entrance, so they match up, and cast iron awning, sort of that same idea carried through and then ending at the entrance to kind of have your eye kind of follow that to the end. Brick material and design style of the windows, depth of windows, painted brick that is fairly consistent with the neighborhood, but contrasting with the Masonic Temple. So the brick, decided to use a brick that's historic. Initially, I found a brick that was made in Finland. It was a long, thin brick that I really loved. But I didn't think, although it's a beautiful brick, I didn't think it was really fitting for this neighborhood. So after much thought, I went back and looked at the historic brick that's made in North Carolina, has the same sort of burnt feel of the old-timey brick. And I have an example here with me. Made in Statesville. There you go. So Statesville company. Yep. Thank you. So I still think that, using that brick, maybe using a mortar that's more sand-based mortar, as is historically being used in that time period, so that it's not a gray and red, and the red, and it's not really showing them in the renderings. But I'm thinking that the arches around the windows would be that brick not painted. So that would be the only part where I would not paint, is to those sort of arches above the windows exposed, coming a little bit out, and kind of mimicking the ST Hall as well as, so it'd be a reverse of what the ST Hall color scheme is. You have the red and the white. In this case, it would be kind of the reverse of that. The building would be white. The brick surrounding the windows would be that red exposed with a sand mortar. So that sand mortar would not give you that, would give you that historic look at the same time as well. So it'd be a certain mix of mortar as well. Having said that, the structure. Once we get to the structure, once we get to that cornice of the 3-story building, I feel like your eye level kind of stops there, and that's where I became more transparent. Okay, from there, I decided to also deconstruct that mass. So, sure, it mirrors the Masonic temple, but at the same time, I started to deconstruct it, and in the sense that, you know, I wanted the corner to be glass because I wanted that, again, that north side of the Masonic temple to really stand out. I wanted to push away from it. I wanted it to breathe, and I wanted glass so that you can almost see through. And that carries through, especially even in my first floor design, where you come into the building and there are these openings so that as you're walking through to the elevators, you have these openings that you can see through the restaurant and out into the courtyard onto the Masonic temple. So it all became kind of tying in together. And I think the glass is important to lighten things up and give the Masonic temple the sort of the presence that it deserves as a corner building and as a darker building as well. So the structure above the 3 stories is angled and set back with a grid that references ST Hall porches. Again, the glass hence completely defining itself away from the bottom 3 stories and bringing the pedestrian to rest the eye on the 3rd story sort of break. And that was kind of the idea. Instead of having a setback, complete setback on all ends, it's like several setbacks as they angle away from the building. So you really, when your eye rests on this building, it really catches you on that 3-story, and hence the scale being more pedestrian friendly. So with this, the deconstruction was important, starting with the buildings, the rhythm of the windows of the new building kind of references the height of the buildings are the same, the style, the window being wood, just like the Masonic temple. And then from there, I deconstruct as we move from north to the south. You begin to start seeing longer windows, and then finally a whole corner that's glass that opens up to the courtyard and allows you to kind of come through that way. So you'll have a flow of people coming in and out even without having to go through the building as well. Lastly, I'm hoping that this building will begin to perhaps define these important architectural elements and help create an architectural template that will inspire future buildings. So hopefully we've come up with something that we could move forward with and can be a reference in the future.
For the benefit of the committee, just kind of give them your education, experience, and your role in the project.
Right, perfect. So my experience is that I've been in Raleigh for about 41 years. I studied high school here and Ravenscroft, and then from there I went to School of Design at NC State, graduated in a degree in architecture in 1989. During those years, I studied under 2 people that really influenced me. Dr. John Royer, which was he was a doctorate in the history of architecture. He was a good friend. I've traveled with him, spent many weeks with him in Berlin, looking at historic buildings. Many of my projects were traveling through Italy in the summers and studying historic architecture. And then, of course, Vernon Sjogren, who was a modernist, worked with Eero Saarinen on the TWA airport and Dulles airports. These were 2 people that really influenced my design style and my career. I grew up, obviously, in a very urban setting, so I'm very keen on an urban design. Most of my projects are urban design related. I like to do infill projects. So that's important to me. My last project was the Saint. It's a townhouse project in Raleigh. It was on St. Mary Street. I not only developed that project, I was also involved in the site plan development. I was involved in I did all the design, whether it's exterior, interior. I sourced all the materials, went to the factories, visited people, brick companies, and had them make me brick specific to the project. Went to wood suppliers in Canada and had them make me wood too specific to the project. Designed all the interiors. So I tend to be a little bit hands-on, a little bit too much maybe, into the details of what happens. And that project happened to be in the Boylan Heights Conservation Overlay District. So that had many, many restrictions, and hence you see it. If I go into the detail of that design, that was very much influenced by the overlay district and the setbacks and the height restrictions and the pitch roof and all these things that I had to work with very closely to get it to where we. So having said that, but prior to that, I've bought and renovated many historic homes in Raleigh. And for 16 years, I also owned a stone company, fabrication company that did countertops and imported stone from all over the world. So I spend a lot of time looking at materials and kind of like sourcing materials for different projects of mine. So.
And obviously, you're the architect on this project.
I am the architect on this project. So just, yeah, absolutely. Sorry.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to tender Mr. Sohail Alawar as the expert.
It's accepted. Thank you.
Did you want to run through your elevations real quick?
Sure. So how do I, just this, okay, just takes me to the next, okay. So elevations, as you can see, with this, I had a friend of mine came down from, an architect friend of mine came down from DC, and he went and measured the Masonic Temple and came up with these drawings based on what's on site right now. And from there, we worked to make it compatible. And as you can see, the buildings match up height-wise in terms of height of the entrance, height of the 3 stories, window size. There's a lot of resemblance, but at the same time, obviously, it's deconstructed. From there, the aluminum storefront going up, there will be cladding on the concrete. It'll be a glazed cladding. And then the top floor being somewhat of a inspiration of a, maybe what you see a lot in the neighborhood is, single-family homes with front porches. And I feel like that was a little bit of my sort of homage to that, which is the large openings, kind of a porch opening, and large curtains coming down and for the rooftop. And that was kind of the thought there with the last floor. Obviously, this building has, it turns its back a little bit on the north side. As you can see in the elevations, the cell tower is on the north. Obviously, this is an urban setting with 0 lot lines, so I have to think about what's going to get built if that cell tower goes away or the parking lot goes away to the east. What will happen? So the building that I'm doing has to accommodate these buildings in the future. And if they come up and build straight up to the brick or to the stone or to the concrete, it has to have no windows in certain locations. So I've tried to accommodate windows as much as possible on the north side. It makes it a really difficult thing for the fire department in some cases because they have to kind of come down through the roof. So you almost have to have a solid wall there, waiting to have another building being built on that site. The eastern side, I was able to, as you can see, where is it? The eastern, okay, I lost you. Okay. The eastern side, as you can see, has a little bit of, I was able to angle things and, okay, I don't know, what am I doing here? Curl up?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, here we go.
Take you back another direction.
Okay, that's, okay. I mean, you can see these, that's the name.
Other direction.
The other direction? Oh, really? Okay, sorry. Ah, okay. I want the east elevation. If you don't mind. So the east elevation, knowing that there will be potentially a building there, I try to, partially take away, obviously you have a stairwell, so what you're seeing that's solid there is a stairwell that's going to take you out of the building, down to that bottom floor, out, and through that alleyway, out to the front of the street. So fire department plays a big part in this design, obviously. That's very important. On the southern facade, I wanted the rooms, if you're staying in one of those rooms, I wanted you to be able to look at the historic neighborhood. I wanted you to see east, I wanted you to see south, and I wanted you to see west. And hence the reason for the design. It worked out so that it also lays nicely with the way the sun hits it, the way obviously the south. I tried to continue the floors over to block the southern sun during the middle of summer, obviously for many reasons. Same thing with the first 3 floors. The bottom floor has a large folding or sliding door, a glass, aluminum glass, which will completely open up this restaurant to the courtyard and turn the place into kind of a lively setting moving forward. And then in the renderings, we were able to, if in your packet that we just presented today, we were able to go in there, take pictures in the past few weeks, and through rendering, we were able to put the building into the pictures and give you a better idea of what the scale will feel like, what it would be like walking down the street. We tend to look at buildings sometimes when we're driving, but the reality is this is a pedestrian setting. So I try to, in that supplemental package that I put forth today, to really give you a feel of what it feels like to come up to that building, what it would be like across the street from that building, how the neighbors will look at it from the east, from the west, from the south, all these different directions. So, that's it. Not sure if we have any questions or if...
We'll have questions. We'll have questions for you later. If that's all you have for the applicant presentation, you can have a seat.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any, or do you have anything else to say?
Just real quick.
Sure.
Sorry. So at this time, I would like to mention that at the beginning of this hearing, the applicant is to submit competent material and substantial evidence into the record showing that its proposal meets the congruity requirements of North Carolina Statute 160D 947A and UDO 10.215D4E, as well as the guidelines as they pertain to the special character of the Prince Hall District. And we're open to any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Is there anyone here, members of the public, who wish to speak in support of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the case? All right, please come forward. State your name, please.
My name, excuse me, my name is Don Davis.
All right, Mr. Davis, you please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right, you may proceed.
I'm Don Davis. I live in Boylan Heights, and I was the chair of the RHDC at one point. And for most of my term on the RHDC, I served on the COA committee and chaired this committee many times. I've had a lot of experience with learning preservation, had training from the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions, and I currently serve on the executive board of Preservation Raleigh, which is a advocacy group for preservation in Raleigh. And when I look at this building, I appreciate the thought that went into it, that the applicant considered the historic thing. And the first 3 floors, I think, are a great reflection of Prince Hall. However, there's 9 floors on top of that, those 3 floors. And the guidelines, especially the guidelines about building new commercial buildings, talks that they should reflect the character of the district. And when we look at the character of Prince Hall, the pictures are in the application. Going down Blunt Street, there's 1-story, 2-story buildings, and Prince Hall, Masonic Temple being the tallest at 3. So a 9-story or 12-story building is not really in keeping with the character of the district. The other guideline speaks to the height of well-regarded buildings should be within 10% of the height. And I have to say this is like 4 times the height of the buildings, not the 10% that the guidelines call for. And I think, you know, when I was on the commission, there was a plan for a hotel in the Prince Hall district. They didn't come to the COA, they just went directly to City Council to have it pulled out of the historic district. And I will say, they made lots of promises of all the good things that would come. City Council liked that. They pulled it out of the historic district, and that began sort of the nibbling away at Prince Hall. That project is now a surface parking lot. Nothing came of it. The hotel never came of it, and it just got pulled out of the historic district. And that might be a good location for this hotel because it's no longer in the historic district. And I would just urge you to follow the guidelines when you're deciding whether this is appropriate and for the district.
Thank you. Any additional opposition to the case? Please state your name.
Good afternoon, Chris Crew, 306 Elm Street, Raleigh.
Mr. Crew, please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
So help me God.
Thank you.
I've been a resident of historic Oakwood for 49 years now. That is my credential. I have a degree in English. I know what the word compatible means. I'm a musician. I know what the word harmony means. So this is an interesting and innovative design. I look through this and I see, you know, some dabblings of Art Deco and international style in some of the forms here. Those two are not harmonious with one another. You know, there's envelope pushing, and then there is replacing an envelope with a container ship. And I think this hinges on scale and compatibility. If we look at section 3.3 of the guidelines, it says that it must be congruous with the character of other commercial buildings in the Prince Hall overlay district in terms of form and materials. There is no form like this in Prince Hall. There are, except for the first 3 stories, no materials like this in Prince Hall. 3.3.7 has very specific guidance regarding congruity in terms of height, form, scale, architectural style, and roof shape. And what that says is it's got to be within 31 or 30% of the height of well-related contributing buildings. This is 300% bigger than the building next to it in terms of height. I think this also misses the mark at 3.8, 0.9, and 10 as well. This is the Prince Hall Historic District. The eponymous building right there is the Masonic Lodge. That's the building that should set the standard for what is compatible. If we look at 3.5.2, this is not compatible in scale with the special character of the districts. That's described in the special character section of the building as 1, 2, and 3 story residential and commercial buildings. This is nothing like that. And I think it just, in general, it just overshadows and defies the special character of the Prince Hall Historic District and two of the most socially significant buildings remaining in that part of the town are the Prince Hall Masonic Lodge and the Tupper Memorial Baptist Church on the next block. And those pictures showed up in the presentation here. I mean, this just, this does no respect to any of that. And I think, beyond that, I see some other issues with just the application, particularly with lacking details in some of the windows and materials. I would argue, first of all, as although I'm an English major and musician, I have also worked in grants and government programs for 25 years. Working with applications, you shouldn't be looking at an application that is not complete, and I don't think this one is complete because it doesn't contain some of the required details. So I urge you to consider this very, very carefully and consider, not only the impact of this one building, but its impact on the character and the history of the Prince Hall district. I mean, that is something important that this city has worked hard to erase from the face of the earth for the last 75 years. They have pushed and pushed and pushed against every little bit of African American history and culture in this city, and this is just not respectful of that. So with that, I'll take a seat. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional statements in opposition to the case? All right, the applicant, you now have the floor to provide any rebuttal evidence that you would like to in response to the opposition that has just been presented.
Thank you. Because this is a quasi-judicial hearing, I would like to respectfully object to both Mr. Davis and Mr. Cruz's testimony, and to the extent that they have offered opinions and have not been qualified as an expert to render testimony in this hearing. Thank you.
Is that a formal request to strike the testimony?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Hold on just a second.
RTN has asked if we can take a recess or if you'd like to continue.
We can continue. I think we're about done. All right, it's the chair's decision that the testimony that was provided by the members or the members of the public in opposition is lay testimony, does not qualify as expert testimony. I'm not going to strike the evidence. It will be goes to the weight of what has been presented, but that's the ruling that I have.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to move into evidence the application presentation, supporting materials, and all of the exhibits relied upon and referred to by the witness, including the staff report and all of its attachments, our objections, and the board take judicial notice of the contents of the city's UDO and other adopted plans. Thank you.
That's accepted. Did you have any other statements in response to the opposition that was provided?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, thank you.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Does the gentleman's...
Who are you directing the question to?
You, asking you.
Okay.
Sorry. Does the gentleman who spoke, who was on the COA, who was a previous member of the COA committee, does that not give him some sort of standing in terms of being able to speak to or have some authority to because of his experience? I mean, I think that's the same thing as being he has sat in our chairs.
And I'd like to layer on top of that, he has gotten formal training in the process by NAPC. Does that not qualify a certain level of expertise?
Yeah.
I'll direct counsel to respond.
Thank you.
The ruling on the motion to strike the testimony, that is the prerogative of the chair, subject to being overruled by the members of the committee. Now, as we discussed, and I don't think the chair would object to my sharing this, the question of whether in a court of law these witnesses would have been allowed to testify and to express their opinions on relevant issues is a fairly close call. It truly is. The testimony was given. I think if there were an appeal and that procedural point was addressed by a judge reviewing this case would have to wrestle with the issue of whether the witness should be allowed to testify in the way of giving an opinion, whether they would qualify as an expert in a court. We are not under the strict rules of evidence. You all are not subject to the strict rules of evidence in a QJ proceeding. And I think that was part of the chair's thinking that generally it was received as lay testimony, but there was no motion, there was no request for it to be qualified as expert. So it was not before you as a very clear issue before they gave their testimony. That being the case, I think it goes primarily to the weight of what you heard, and if the testimony was not to be considered at all, then that may be for a reviewing court to decide that question. That is a close question. But again, the ruling of the chair was that he considered it to be laid testimony, and that would go to the weight of the evidence. If the members of the committee disagree with that, of course, you're free to challenge that decision and suggest a different decision. But I think that's where things stand right now on that testimony.
Okay, thank you.
You're fine with me proceeding?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now we'll open the floor for committee questions among my fellow commissioners.
I'd like to ask one sort of foundational question here. I can't recall
Is this a question for the applicant or?
of Raz.
Okay. Question for counsel.
Of counsel. I cannot recall another COA application where we've been asked to approve an application for a building that is in excess of the underlying zoning height. And then we have from the staff report that the underlying zoning height is a 3-story, it's a DX3, and this is a DX12. Do we have that power to even approve this?
My understanding, and I would invite council's comments on this, my understanding is that the applicant has acknowledged that a rezoning is still going to be a requirement. This proposal, this project is subject, of course, to zoning approval and also the requirement to get a COA permit. And the question of timing was kind of a difficult one for the council, the committee, and also the applicant. So I would suggest that subject to this, and I think it should be a condition, and I think that council, Mr. Paul and I talked about this a bit a few weeks ago, would be willing to to put a condition or a clarification in any order to the effect that the granting of a COA has no effect on the pending rezoning application, and the project is still dependent upon, approval of the project is dependent upon having the proper zoning, so that it would be allowed.
That is my understanding as well.
Ready.
Yep.
Okay.
So you, basically, that issue is really not before you right now. You're to rule based on the standards that you typically apply in these cases, which is, of course, congruity with the special character.
Okay.
Is another question, is there some reason why the cart is before the horse on this?
I don't think that's really for the committee to wrestle with.
I'm just
I've
wondering.
thought about it, and I could see arguments that it makes sense to go with the zoning first, or it makes sense to hear the COA first. But legally,
All right.
I don't think it makes a difference.
I'm happy to do it either way. Yeah. It puts us in a position of, in my opinion, it puts us in a position of advocacy towards, or at least some kind of commentary that would be understood in the zoning case.
And I think if the council had approved a rezoning prior to the matter coming before you, the opposite argument could be made.
Uh-huh.
So the idea is there probably is no correct sequencing of this kind of thing.
Okay. I have questions for the applicant.
Go ahead.
You may step forward.
But just a quick thing, we did go in front of city council. And
Can you move the microphone up, please?
Yes. We did go in front of city council, and city council has asked us to come to you. So
Okay.
we
Okay.
did go through that.
All right,
Yeah,
you're
I
here.
don't know.
That's
Yeah,
great.
We
Thank
did,
you.
and we went with the thought that we are, working both back and forth. So
Okay. Where are your proportional studies? Proportional studies.
proportional studies.
Yes.
In terms of the scale of the building.
In terms of the proportions of the overall context, the existing building, this design, and how it relates, and how the height is arrived at by those proportional studies.
Right. The proportional studies were done. I went around. I spent
I'm not asking, I'm asking where they are in this, if they're here in this package,
They are.
or what you consider a proportional study, because we're both architects, so we can go to battle on this very strongly. And there are no proportional studies in this at all. The Masonic Lodge was built on a very strong golden section. It had to be.
Mm-hmm.
The Masonic, that is the basis of the Masonic Lodge. There is not an understanding of that proportional system in your diagrams, or there are no diagrams.
I want to just make a point of order that this is a time for questions of the applicant, and then we can discuss
sure.
what is in or not in the application.
Well, I guess what
later.
I'm trying to get at is what I mean. I'm trying to clarify the question in terms of what I'm asking about as a proportional study.
No, absolutely.
Because
And
what I see in front of me, there is no proportional study.
That is correct. And I don't believe in proportional studies. So it's just my architectural my architectural education, my architectural beliefs. I think there are some serious proportional studies that are very important, and I would agree with you that in classical architecture there were very important studies of proportions, and it can be argued that there are, and some things have been juxtaposed on things that were already built and said, oh well, there's a proportional study. But my education, just my belief, and this is not in any, it's like, do you believe in this or do you believe in that? I really didn't think that a proportional study was necessary in this case. So.
It is.
And one of the things the guidelines points us to is looking at relative proportions in the district of buildings. And if we're judging compatibility, it asks us to use that as one of the elements of the congruity judgment. And that's really the core of it. Now, the guidelines do talk about the 10% of well-related height, and obviously this is well beyond that. But they also offer guidance to have setbacks from the historic structure, the structure that you're supposed to perceive from the street, to to anything that's above that level. And I see we have setbacks starting at the fourth level on two sides, but not on two other sides.
Yeah, I feel like John is asking me, maybe I'm misunderstanding
They're two different,
John.
yeah.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding John, but the way I looked at this building is I went around and looked at heights. I measured. I basically went around and took pictures of myself. I don't have it in the program here.
And that is not proportion.
And that's not what proportion you're talking about.
That is not
So we're both kind of, I think, talking about two different things.
Yes,
right
we
now.
are.
So yeah,
correct.
I figured. Right.
I am asking about proportions in terms of true design systematic approach.
That's right.
This is not a systematic approach.
It is not.
When you leave out proportion, you have left out the system. And you are now decorating.
Well,
Now-
that's obviously, John, obviously
Well,
that is
the-
your
the building-
Point of order.
your
Can we-
thoughts about
point of
architecture.
Order. Can we tone the conversation down?
Sure.
And this is a time for questions of the applicant.
Okay.
And if I might ask a question, I'm looking at this drawing, which shows me the sawtooth form of the fronts of the units.
Right.
And areas that look like they're tiny balconies, but I don't see any fall restraint or anything. So your intent is that those areas are not accessed?
They're not accessible.
Okay.
They're not.
And
Curtis, I was going to ask the same question. So, was there any consideration to making them occupiable space?
There are, and they probably will be at some point. I haven't really made a decision on that because there's been some issues with hotel rooms having balconies and people using them to
jump.
So that was a little bit, but I wanted to also shield the sun from the sudden exposure. So it was a two-pronged approach, and that's why it is where it is there.
Well, and there's
sorry
a
to
third
interrupt you.
consideration is cleaning. How do you get out there and clean that zone?
Right. Obviously, it'll have to be material that works well and kind of ages well.
Yes.
And these are things that I'm looking into.
Gotcha.
So I have a question about the, there's a large blank wall on the north and the east, and I feel like the project's successful on the west, kind of aligning the cornice height, and then you step back about 5 feet, it seemed like, where the tower starts.
Right.
Had you given any thought to finding a way, I know, there's tight constraints on the site, but continuing that line around on the other facades, because in the application, it is pretty visible, that blank wall from a block or two away.
I agree with you, Rob. I think one of the issues is that it's two things. One, you have two huge sets of stairs to the north. So you have the corner, and if you look at the floor plan, and if we go to the floor plan, which here, if we go forward.
I mean, there are opportunities for things like spandrel glass, though. We're not forced to a blank plane, right?
You know, you gave me all this information, and I'm not using any of it, you notice? Keep going the wrong way.
There you go.
See, yeah, so in this, if you can see in this floor plan on the left there, you have 2 stairwells, you have an elevator set, and then you have the entrance to the trash and to the fire department. So you really, like, it's all the utilities are on that side, and as you go up, it kind of continues on. And even if I've set back, I can't really do windows because it's elevators and stairwells, and you have to do, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think even if there was like a reveal or some transition, just so that the tower, the cornice line carries around, because
Yes.
when I look at it in 3D, it sort of feels like you're creating a very sympathetic facade along Blunt Street,
Right.
but Blunt Street's also one way from the north, so your experience is first if you're driving
Yes.
or walking from downtown, like from Moore Square, it would be to see that blank wall first, and kind of I feel like that facade just seems like it's kind of on its own, and doesn't turn the corner.
I totally agree, and it's just that, you know, with the small site and with the northern exposure and with all these you know, I wanted to carry that line, and can be easily done to carry that 3rd story line. But once you get above, I think, you know, we could do something with maybe the pattern. Maybe, you know, obviously there needs to be some sort of pattern there, and I think that can be done, starting from, you know, that 3rd story and then moving up. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
I don't know if.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree, though, totally. So,
Thanks.
of course.
I think that's it right now, Wes.
Any additional questions from the committee members? All right, this time we'll close the evidentiary hearing. You can have a seat. Thank you very much for your presentation. We will proceed with committee discussion. I'll start off with just with where I am with the application, and this is based on, you know, the evidence presented from the applicant, and then looking at, you know, the guidelines. The height of this structure to me is concerning. Looking at the guidelines, I just had it up. It's been mentioned throughout today. I believe it's 337, and this is for construction of primary buildings. You know, design new buildings to be congruous with the surrounding buildings, contribute to the special character of the district in terms of height, form, size, scale, massing, proportion, architectural style. Height of new buildings should generally fall within 10% of well-related nearby buildings. And then looking at 3.5 on the commercial edition of commercial new construction, that is 351, 352, 353, 4, and 5, and especially looking at 0.7, regardless of overall mass or height of the new construction, maintain consistent massing and perceived building height at the street level. Again, at 3.5.4, the building wall line generally limit the height of new construction on a vacant lot to within 10% of the height of the wall-related nearby buildings. And you know, looking at, you know, this district itself, as pointed out in the staff report, trying to find the wall-related neighboring structures on South Blunt Street and East Cabarrus are a mix of 2- and 3-story commercial buildings, 1.5- and 2-story residential buildings. The proposed structure at 12 feet blows beyond that. Given where the structure is within the Prince Hall Historic District, I can't vote to approve this application based on the proposed height, and I would hold that the evidence presented by the applicant is in direct contradiction to the guidelines. So that's my thoughts.
I would like to advance this discussion beyond height. I would like to advance the discussion to design. Yes, I get emotional about this because proportion does matter. I don't care, you can pick and choose what you want, but it's, you're sitting in that chair. I may not believe in you, but you're sitting right there and you still exist. And so does proportion. And you have chosen not to bring it to understanding the DNA of this context. And that is the DNA of this context. How can you design anything, any of us, without understanding its DNA, especially in a historic context? Reference 3.3.7, word proportion. Reference 3.5. Where'd it go? Sorry. 3.5.5, proportion. I don't care if the applicant doesn't want to do a proportional study. It should be required. And I really, really, really want to see this be successful, because this is the first time we've ever gotten to see a project which really pushes the boundaries of what could work. It's a C project right now, and I'm a professor, former professor. It kind of, as I understand it, it currently meets the programmatic the programmatic issues that has been brought to the table, but it has no relationship right now to the body that is being put into. And that means understanding the width of the street, because that's a public space. I think that we should consider the context, because we are in a district. This is not an isolated belly button of a building. It's not just the Masonic Lodge. It is the space of the Masonic Lodge across the street, the width of that street, the height of that Masonic Lodge, the height of the other building that then shades and shadows that space. There is a space between these buildings, which has to be thought about. This is a spatial exercise, and it has not been done. And while I really think I am in very much proposing that we defer this, because I want to see the work done so that we can really make this happen. I would also reference, for our understanding, the COA application, and I think the applicant should very much take note of this, is COA 0156-2021, Pine State. A perfect example of how a high-rise building can work within a 2 or 3 story context successfully. And it got approval. It's a landmark building. Beautifully done, because they understood and went through the process, and the diagrams are in that application. I would very much think that the applicant would benefit from doing more research and less wanting of his intent.
Can I respond?
I'll provide you an opportunity. Thank you.
I'm happy to hop in next. I'm also struggling here with finding congruity with the guidelines or the district, and the height is part of it, a big part of it, but it's also the treatment of the height. We read the guidelines, and 3.5.4 it sort of implicitly allows us to look at additional height beyond the context of the district. But it asks that the additional height beyond the building wall line, I'm going to quote, that be accommodated behind the building wall line through the use of design details that reduce the perceived building height and mass, setbacks, fenestration, bay patterns, and using those things to help bring it into the district but push it back from the district. And the next guideline in point 5 talks about reducing the perceived height and mass through using architectural elements to drop things down to the human scale, and selecting exterior materials that have texture, pattern, and scale similar to those in the historic district. We can certainly say that on the upper levels, it really doesn't do that. I think the biggest, it talks about regardless of overall mass or height of new construction, maintain a consistent massing and perceived building height at the street level, which it provides a very monolithic wall on the north and the east side, which doesn't do that. And specifically, guideline in that section, point 9, says not to have, it says it's not appropriate to create a monolithic effect to the building exterior, either vertically or horizontally, except for characteristic of the district. And we haven't heard testimony that that is characteristic of the district. So those things would help us get to the far side. And one of the things we've discussed in detail on this committee is how it is possible to approve things that don't check every box. The question is how in sum the whole thing reads. And the problem is getting to that sum, and I think it's summed up in the application on the page in the PDF 30 of 40, East View with context, not to scale, where we're looking at the building from the viewpoint within the district, and we see this enormous white plane coming up. And I think that really harms the case here. So that's where I have difficulty. I would, again, I would be very happy to see this come back and get reviewed again. I think going up to 12 stories is a pretty heavy lift to justify, but I'd love to see it try, or 13 stories really with the roof deck, because in truth it presents 12 stories to the south and the west, but it presents 13 stories to the north and east. Mostly because of that monolithic wall. And I suspect it doesn't help that it's white, but I don't want to get into design here so much as reacting to what I'm seeing. I think the pedestal of the building, the first 3 floors, if they came here on their own, we'd have a lot of discussion about how the pattern deconstructs and melts from the north to the south, but I think in the end, we would likely approve it. But it's the entire composition that I think is where it's falling apart. The top is overwhelming the base. And I think the goal is for the base to overwhelm the top from the point of view of the guidelines. That's my 2 bits for now.
Yeah.
Jordan, anything?
Yeah, I don't know if I have much to add. It's a difficult circle to square. I'm actually kind of compelled by this east view with context. I mean, it's sort of believable, despite it presenting as very monolithic. Unfortunately, the building to the right in that is not in the district. It's an 8-story apartment complex that's on Person Street. Yeah, I have comments for committee discussion outside of the case, I think, but nothing else.
Rob, anything?
I don't have anything to add that's already been discussed.
Okay. I'll reopen the evidentiary hearing to provide an applicant. You said you wanted to provide a response. You're free to say what you'd like.
Again, this is a very tough site. It's 0.13 acres. John, this is not 5 acres sitting on.
I'm not saying it's easy.
I know. I didn't say, this is 5 acres. I don't have room to go put the building like 10 feet back and have the 3-story in the front, the milk building, the dairy building there we approved 30 stories. In my opinion, if I come out of Clockwork, which is my business, and I see a 30-story building right in front of Clockwork, I would have never approved that. I don't care what that design looks like. 30 stories in a neighborhood that is mostly 2-3 stories with a narrow street, right? This is a downtown Raleigh district. We went from the historic overlay, the Boylan Heights, where I did backflips for 3 years to build 17 townhomes. 17 townhomes, it took me 3 years to get it approved because I was in an overlay district and it said to me, I got to do this and I got to do that, and I did everything. And consequently, we won the Sir Walter Award for that design. I feel very strongly about design. When you say proportions, there is proportion in this building. I just don't sit down and do a study of proportions. I do proportions. Every design has proportion. I'm not a decorator, as you know. I'm an architect. But having said that, this is a 0.13 acre lot, right? We're approving 7 stories next to, they've taken out the neighborhood that I last designed in, the overlay district in Boylan Heights, and are throwing up 7-story buildings on smaller lots where the parking lots are going to become the main element in that neighborhood in 1-story neighborhoods. This is downtown Raleigh. I'm on the edge of the COA. I'm on the edge, sorry, of the COA, of the historic district, right? It's an empty parking lot. I came here to make sure that I satisfy everyone, right? And it's a tough task. For me to design a building here, I don't care who the architect is. There are certain things that have to go into a building. A dump, a trash place, a dump, for the trash can, a fire department area, stairwells, elevators. Those, I can push them back and put windows on them and make them beautiful, right? But there's no room to do that. I can angle it, I can turn it. Now, all of a sudden, I'm 5,500 square feet. By the time you take out the 1,000 square foot for the elevators and the stairs, you got nothing to work with. I'm trying to revive this corner. I've gone out of my way to get money. I've been spent a year and a half talking to the Masonic Temple, meeting with them every Thursday, leaving my home, meeting with them, trying to figure out, writing a whole thing so we studied the whole neighborhood. We went out of our way to get them the money to get this building renovated. I know it's tough. I'm not going to satisfy you, John. I know that. There's going to be things you're not going to like about this building, and I don't expect you to like everything about this building. But the bottom line is, this is a project that will liven up this part of town that we are going like this, and I want to take it like that, okay? This is the time for me to do something. If I keep going back and forth, I would rather you turn me down tonight and let me go to city council than to sit here and keep dragging this, because this is a very, very, very expensive process. It is. It's by the time I'm done with this thing, I could have, built half this building. So you have to keep in mind, there are suggestions. There are some things that I would listen to. I'm open-minded. I feel very strongly about design, and I feel very strongly about what would work and what wouldn't work. This is what I feel would work there. Does it have some issues? Absolutely. I agree with you, Rob. I agree with Rob. I agree with you, John. The proportions, sometimes you tweak it here and there, and obviously it's an evolving design, but a design has to evolve. If you saw my first drawing for this building a year ago, and you saw my drawings for this building now, it's 2 different things. This thing will have to keep evolving. My thought is, when I came here, is you approve it with the condition that I'm going to have to come back and give you more details. There are a lot of things that need to be fixed. But for me to sit here and design a whole building, every detail, every product, every corner, nobody's asked to do that in any part of the city, and they're putting up 30-story buildings. No, not to get approved. People are going to zonings with not even a site plan, maybe because we're in the overlay district. But I can assure you, when I fought the neighbors who wanted to put up a 7-story building in the overlay district that I built a Saint in, when I went there, I said, where is your rendering? Oh, it's too costly for us to do a rendering. Those were the exact words out of their mouth, right? Their answer to me was, why do you care? You already sold all the townhouses. Why are you here, right? I care because I care about the city. But at the same time, I have to tell you that for me to design every element of this building, a 12-story building, and to bring it to you is a monumental task. It's a very expensive task, let alone lawyers payment on mortgage, on the mortgage, things like that. All that is a big monumental thing. Give me the approval, and we'll tweak it. It can't be tweaked. But I don't think this building is out of context with this. What I've walked around this neighborhood over and over and over again, looking for things that I can look at, that I can integrate into this design, right? And I can tell you right now, as I said in the beginning, this is a war zone. This is a neighborhood that most of it, the good stuff, even downtown Raleigh, most of the good stuff has been torn down. And I'm here put in the task of finding a new language for a building in a neighborhood that most of the important buildings have been torn down. And the building that I'm trying to renovate, right, the existing building, will get renovated because I'm going to have this building next to that building, and that's how this corner is going to get helped. This is the point that I'm trying to say. Please be considerate of that, and be considerate of the time that it's taken to get to this point. It's very tough. And it is, again, 0.13 acres. If it wasn't in this neighborhood, I would be already putting footings in the ground right now. Be probably on the 5th floor in the concrete. So, anyways, please.
Thank you.
I would like to offer one small point of clarification. I believe the Saint is located in the North Boylan Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District, which is an overlay district, but it is not a historic overlay district.
Correct.
Thank you. I'll close the evidentiary portion of the hearing, reopen committee discussion, and I'll add, I'm sympathetic to the challenges that you're facing in this project. But 10, 15 years ago, the city council decided to create this historic overlay district, and they decided to include this empty lot in the historic overlay district. One can question whether that was a wise decision to be made, but it was a decision that the city council made. So given that, this lot is within this historic district, and these historic guidelines apply to this lot currently, and we are tasked with reviewing applications and applying the guidelines to those applications. And as I stated earlier, I couldn't vote to approve the application as presented, and would hold that the applicant failed to present a prima facie case that the proposed structure is congruous with the special character of the district.
And I'd like to suggest that if we could see some evidence of these large blank faces being consistent with the character of the district, of the sawtooth form of side walls of the building being characteristic of the district, of the overall proportion being characteristic of the district, I think I'd have a lot easier time approving with conditions, depending on the details. But I'm reminded of one of the very early Supreme Court cases on preservation, where they held that it is not a right of a property owner to be able to do the highest use of a given property. And if the 1.3 acre lot doesn't support this building, it doesn't support this building. The lot needs a different building. So I don't think that's can drive us. You're about to say something.
I was just going to ask you, I want to be respectful of the applicant and sending them away with maybe something hope with that. Do you think the things you were asking for about, documentation of well-related, is it there? Because I'm not confident that it is.
Well, it certainly isn't in the application, and we've seen a lot in the application that suggests it's not there. We're asking to push the boundary, right? And if we're looking for congruity with the guidelines, that means that there's some areas where we're quite congruous with the guidelines, but there may be some areas where we're not, and height might be an area where we're not. But I don't know that 12 stories is ever going to get over that hump unless we see something that tells us that
Correct.
it can. And my gut instinct, as the applicant has said, he doesn't have the room to do the setbacks like was done on the creamery. And that might just be the constraint of this lot. It just, the constraint's not going to allow it to happen. I don't know.
Or maybe that doesn't work with the current design, but I'm going to sort of show my hand here, but I would feel a lot more confident with something that stepped in on all sides, because I think that would be a very different looking building. And, but
Yeah.
so that's one, idea that I've been wrestling with since we got this application.
And honestly, the reason for my question earlier about the balconies, for instance, is we know this design's going to evolve, and we know that there's going to be an incorporation of some safety features so that somebody can go out there and actually maintain the exterior of this building. And if that accommodation ends up being railings like we see on the rooftop deck, well, then that's changing the entire character of how this building really presents on those levels. So
That's right.
I agree, this does not have to be a fully designed building by
Correct.
any means.
Correct.
And I don't think we ever approve a fully designed project. So there's a lot of stuff that we can push to staff approval, but things that impact the appearance and the form of the exterior of the building, those need to get designed into what we approve. And
Yeah, because I think in the section 3.5, the fifth 3.5.5, the perceived height, reduce the perceived height. I think that probably for any of us with the architectural mindset, to me, that is potentially the most potentially helpful
I think so.
language, but it needs to be documented. And but I also don't want to say spend all this time redesigning, 12 floors of hotel, and then we're like, well, still
12 stories.
Right.
yes.
Well-
so I feel like we should, while we're having this discourse, we should be honest about that.
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
the applicant did also say, go ahead and deny. I don't know if that was a genuine request, but if there's no way it stands a chance, that they would like to take it back up with city council.
Yeah, I don't think it was much of the request as was a dare.
I would also say that I think our job here, I think this, because it's a 12-story building in a historic district, or 13-story building, I don't know why we keep saying 12, it's 13 with the rooftop, in a historic district, one way or another, this thing's going to end up in litigation, whether we approve it or disapprove it. Whatever happens here, we have to have a defensible decision.
Yeah.
And I think our conversation here is helping articulate
Correct.
the concerns and why I think what our apparent outcome is going to be, whether it's denial or an ask for a revise and resubmit.
Right. My hope with this project was that this would become the model for what could happen in Prince Hall's commercial district again and again, because the general characteristic of the neighborhood, as we all know, 3 to 4 stories, for most lots here, is somewhat not economically feasible in today's standards. And so if we consider the historical evolution of a district, I personally think that economy is part of that. And therefore, looking at other options that maximize and make viable a vibrant district with small lots in a modern context has such rich, yes, go do it. That requires a great deal of understanding, study, and creativity in terms of how it is approached. With and this, I want to go back to the Pine State thing again. I'm not saying that that's the project to follow. I'm saying that is the documentation process to follow, showing that in that study, there are understandings of what a pedestrian sees from the street. You understand how high that building is relative to the short building. That's not here yet. I'm not saying redesign the building. I'm saying give me the evidence to understand why it should be that high based on the context rather than just, I want 12 stories. That doesn't, where does that come from? You know? Why can't we understand, you know, this, it could be a model for how height can evolve into a traditional 3 to 4 story context into 8, 10, 12, maybe 12, I don't know. Because the evidence isn't there yet to say that 12 stories works with the existing proportional context of the street to width to space to mass condition. Because we're not, and we have it here in the guidelines. It's just that this applicant is choosing not to provide it yet. And I think if, you know, here is my thought. I'll make a motion to defer if we can, because I want one, proportional analysis, diagrams of the proposed building mass to open space relative to the street context, including buildings across the street and to the Masonic Lodge building. Second, contextual sections that illustrate the building's proportional relationship to both the width of the courtyard and the street as public spaces. 2, material and color analysis of the existing context. Now, we did get a little bit of the brick thing today, but that's just his choice for the brick. Where is the evidence of what the materials are in the context that help us understand that his choice of brick works with that context? He's not presented any of that. Illustrations of how pedestrian views at the street, across the street, and from the neighboring block. Where's the view angle here? How does that impact how does that begin to impact not the design but the massing of the design? I'm not going to get into the design aspects of this yet. We're not there. It's incomplete. Finally, daytime, nighttime illustration of signage and lighting. What's it going to look like at night? We don't know. We have no clue.
And these are things we asked of other applicants.
And these are, yes, these are very, very basic.
One point, in the supplemental package that I left, you have very specific perspectives. If you know, they're not architectural diagrams that you're looking for. I know you're not. They're not like the beautiful architectural diagrams that you. But I have real diagrams. I went on the street, took pictures, and plunked the building so that when you're standing on every corner in that neighborhood, you can see what that building looks like. So proportionally, it's right there.
No, it's not.
I mean,
no,
if you
it's not.
Look at that package.
Check the other diagrams.
You can't tell you more than it.
Sir,
please.
I should have said something earlier.
Yeah, I know.
We're in committee discussion now. Thank you for your comments.
Again, I refer back to the diagrams presented in that other application because I want this application to be as successful as possible and a model that others can refer to in the future to make this thing actually work.
And I will say that like one specific study from the street that we're missing here is from a little further north on Blunt Street to get the sense of how it hits. We do have studies from the south and across of Blunt Street in this revised packet. But we don't have from the district looking out.
They're just pictures.
They're pictures.
But they're
perspective
not,
views.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that doesn't help me, you know, when I look at, you know, what I've seen in the diagrams, understanding exactly where that height hits, that helps you understand what the appropriate height could be, should be, or would be. It helps you understand it.
I'm going to just circle back to a little bit of what Rob said earlier. The application is proposed. It's a 12-story structure, and as Curtis said, 13 with a roof. And we're looking at the height of the well-related structures around it. I mean, I'm just repeating myself honestly, but 2- and 3-story commercial buildings. I mean, this more than doubles that. And I don't know if wanting the applicant to do more studying and if it's just kicking the can down the road, per se. And I don't think that's fair.
I don't believe
to anyone.
I don't believe that. I don't think that's not kicking the can down the road. That is understanding the basis for whether it could be approved or not. And I don't know yet.
So, Wes, were you getting that denial with that, like the end of that statement? Were you instead of deferral? Is that what you're kind of?
I'm in support of denial due to the applicant's failure to present a prima facie case that the proposed construction is congruous with the special character of the district.
And I guess a follow-up question to you would be like, do you think it's impossible for them to make that case?
Right.
Because that's, I mean,
At 12 stories, no.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
I interrupted you. Let me let you finish the question.
Yeah. Do you think it is possible for them to make that case at all, ever? Because I guess like with deferral, maybe they didn't do it this time, but they hypothetically could do it at a later date. But with denial, it's sort of like they could never do it.
At 12 stories, no. I don't think it could be done.
Right. But if we defer, they could come back at
I mean, we could ask the applicant to come up and ask them, can these studies be done to support something at this height? But I think I know the answer to that question.
Sure. And Rob, go ahead. I feel like
I was just going to say, I'd been looking in the glossary because the special characters, essays all refer to well-related nearby buildings, and admittedly, Raz helped me read correctly, but, existing contributing buildings within 1.5 blocks of the subject property. And so you were asking Jordan, but I think you knew the answer, that it may be impossible to do anything, to find any examples within 1.5 blocks that are well-related and nearby and in the district that, would be compatible with a 12-story building. And I think we've already talked about, people have referenced several sections, but there is the, 10%, generally 10% within well-related structures. So that's a big delta because it is a fairly, the commercial buildings in this district are relatively short by comparison.
I think the one spot where there's wiggle room there is in that 3.5.4 that says, at the building wall line, generally limit the height of a new construction on a vacant lot to within 10% of well-related nearby buildings. It doesn't talk about the entire building, it's at the wall line. And what we've heard from the applicant is the lot's so small, it may not be possible to step back. And I think that's the question. I know we've heard a little bit in the past about how well-related nearby may or may not be a viable measure in a court, an appeal, but I think if we look at the district as a whole, actually, nearby is where the most likely well-related buildings are historic buildings, so the material you have to look at. So I think in this case, that is a moot distinction, right? So I think I would suggest we ask the applicant what they want us to do at this point. I really would hate to deny it.
I don't. I'm not going to vote to deny it.
We work so hard on everything that maybe 1% of the COA applications come to a denial.
Yeah.
And I would hate for this to be one of them, but it's still.
No, I have more hope than that.
Curtis, were you about to say something, Jordan?
Well, I was going to say, just to make the case for deferral, they could choose not to come back before us.
Yeah.
We don't have to close that door.
Is that
per se.
procedurally?
I'm sorry, Mr. Jordan, I didn't exactly catch the question. I was,
Like, if we vote to defer, they could choose to not,
Withdraw.
to withdraw, correct?
yes, and sometimes what the committee does is just to ask if the applicant is in a position where he's willing to suggest to the committee that he would like it to be deferred in lieu of a denial, or whether he would prefer the denial. I think that's probably the most straightforward way to handle
Well,
it.
I think, Wes, do you think?
Have the applicant and their attorney come forward and just kind of lay it out for us what you'd like.
Give some.
Good evening, Molly Stewart, Morningstar Law Group. So we've been listening carefully for the additional information that's been requested, as well as the standards that you're seeking to apply. And in particular, the question on our minds, I think we've heard it from many of you, is the 12-story something that has a path to approval? If not, we don't have a response to that. So I think we're still looking for that guidance. Some of this additional information we could attempt to provide. Some of it will likely also not be available, although we did hear you say not every box needs to be checked. We probably won't find an example of a sawtooth facade nearby, for example. So we won't necessarily be able to check every box. We may be able to bring back some or most of the information that you've discussed, but we don't yet hear if that can make a difference.
Yeah, I'd like to add one thing. The sawtooth facade. You know, so I'm always thinking about what, you know, when you're designing these things, you have to figure out like where are we with this. So say that the hypothetically that the Masonic temple gets torn down, and somebody tries to put up a 10-story building there. I have to make sure that that facade works with that 10-story building. If the cell tower goes away and somebody puts up a 10-story building, which is what it is already over there, that tower is about 12 stories high, then I have to make sure that that facade actually works with that. And if they have zero lot line, they have to work with me. I have to work with them and get it ready basically to be a flat wall, right? So I tried to pull that south side and as much as possible, and I pulled the building back, and I lost a lot of square footage. And that's the reason why you have this facade as well. I mean, that's one of the main reasons, right? You go to the north, and you think I'm happy with the north facade? I'm not. I mean, I have to tell you. I mean, you know. I mean, that's not my work.
No.
No, it isn't. I mean, I'm not happy with it. Am I happy with the east facade? It's not bad. I don't mind it. I don't think the overall feel of the building is bad. I kind of like it. I think, you know, some things, I'm never going to find enough things there in the neighborhood that will work to satisfy, I think, what we are looking for in the guidelines. So if it becomes it's an issue of litigation, as you mentioned, whether it gets approved or not approved, then I don't really want a part of that litigation. Because litigation for me is, it's like a path that I'm already a year and a half, 2 years in. I'm not interested in litigation. I dealt with that at the Saint. I had sewer lines going through the property that nobody knew about, and I didn't go through litigation. We just accommodated them. Having said that, I would rather move forward. I would rather I get a clear answer from you guys, and I apologize for interrupting earlier. I didn't know it was not my turn to speak. So, but I would rather get a clear answer than be in that gray area anymore. I can't be in that gray area anymore. It's been too long. I would like to get some sort of resolution. Thank you.
A question for staff that might help with this. The cell phone tower, that's in the district, isn't it? That lot is in the district.
Yes.
That is correct. The lot is in the district.
So that lot would be subject to the same guidelines that you're subject to.
That is correct.
Correct.
So I think if you go with this building with that thought, unless you know something that we don't, one has to assume that you're going to have something with a similar constraint on it next door. Therefore, perhaps the built-to line or the lack of fenestration on that side is not necessary to accommodate something that isn't currently zoned for.
Council, do you want to provide a response as well?
This is not not authoritative because it's definitely not my area of law. But my understanding is there are FCC laws in effect that preempt local land use regulations.
Yes.
So I wouldn't automatically assume that the cell tower had to go through COA approval or that it did. And I think quite likely
No,
it is exempted
The
from
cell
having
tower
to
won't,
do
but
that.
another building would.
Right.
Going
Of
up
course,
there.
of
Yeah.
course.
I mean, I reference this back to the Milton Small building, which is the former bank on the corner of Martin and Fayetteville, next door to what is now Hudson. That is a four-sided tower. It was designed and built that way in the 1960s, and there has always, and yes, another building Hudson could be torn down and another building could go up, but it has to deal with it, just like you have to deal with the Masonic Lodge. So I don't buy the argument that I have to have a blank wall there. So I think there is incredible potential with this, with the right open-mindedness to be able to approach it, and we can defer it to see if they can meet the challenge.
Any other comments from the committee?
I'm ready for.
All right, it seems that there's two options here, so I'm going to move the ball along. I'll make the first motion that the application be denied because the application failed to present a prima facie case that the proposed structure is congruous with the special character of the district. So that motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of the motion signify by raising your hand. All right, motion passes. This is the first time I've had a denial, so I appreciate the application and the effort that you all put into it. The decision will be final at next month's meeting when the meeting minutes are approved and signed. Thank you. We'll take a 10-minute recess.
Gotta pee. Yes.
Call this meeting of the Certificate of Appropriateness Committee back to order. We're ready to proceed with the next application. This will be 221 Elm, COA 137, 2023. Are there any members of the committee who have an interest in this matter or otherwise feel that they cannot be impartial or fair in the hearing of this case? Seeing none, we will proceed. I call the applicant forward. Property owners are Sarah and Gary Cohen. Project contact Ashley Morris. Are they here today? Thank you for your patience. Hopefully the remaining 3 applications go a little faster. Please introduce yourself.
Or we'll sleep here.
I'm Ashley Morris. I'm the architect for the project.
I'm Gary Cohen, the owner with my wife Sarah of the property.
Great, thank you. Ask you both to please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. I'll recognize staff for their presentation.
Just a moment. All right. This case is COA 137, 2023 for 221 Elm Street in the Oakwood Historic District. The request is to construct an addition and screen porch, construct patio, remove tree, and plant replacement tree. This is a view of 221 Elm from the street and a few perspective views down the side property lines. Here, there's a driveway on this side as well. This is a view of the rear yard. You can see the existing deck on the right and an accessory structure in the rear corner. View of the rear facade of the existing main house. Looking back to the south, I believe. And detail shot of that rear shed. There are no staff concerns. And the applicant has not provided a presentation, but is present for questions.
All right, you have the floor. Thank you.
We're happy with the conditions that the staff provided, and
You please step up to the microphone.
I'm sorry. We're happy with the conditions that the staff provided, and if we're just here to answer questions or.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone here who wishes to speak in support of the application? Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the case? Anyone with questions or comments on the case? Hearing none, we will proceed with commissioner questions, if there are any. Seeing none, go, Rob.
Sorry, I always have a question. Hey, Ashley, just a question for the application is very clear, so thank you for that. The one thing I guess where the addition is extending off of the rear of the house, is it in plane? And I'm thinking if you're facing the house on the left side, so I believe that would be south.
So it is inset on the side that we're looking at right now by 12 inches, and then it is in plane on the left side.
Okay.
But we moved a window and put a corner board down just to show that there was something that happened at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, I'll close the evidentiary hearing and we'll proceed with committee discussion. Y'all can have a seat. Thank you. Any discussion from the committee?
Do we like that corner board telling the story, Curtis?
I've seen that enough in the district that does it for me.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay.
Any additional comments?
Nope.
All right, I'll go ahead and move that that based on the evidence presented and the staff report, that the application for certificate of approval be granted, based on subject to the following conditions: that the following materials and specifications be submitted to and approved by staff prior to installation or construction. A, asphalt shingle product data and color. B, paint colors if not matching existing. C, gutter downspout specifications and locations, if any. D, exterior lighting specifications, if any. And E, mechanical equipment specifications, if any. Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The decision will be final at next month's, is it next month's or next week's meeting? Next month?
Next
Next
month.
month's meeting. Our staff is good, but that would be too much for them. So the decision will be final after next month's meeting when the minutes are approved and signed. Thank you.
Excellent application again, Ashley. Thank you.
Okay, next is 502 Polk. This is COA 133 2023. Property owners are Kate Twillman and Jeffrey Radinovich. Are they here today? Great. Please come forward and introduce yourself, please.
I'm the property owner, Cameron Radinovic.
I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name.
I'm Corey. I do the architect, plan drawings, and handle the permitting.
All right, thank you. Ask you both to please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Great, thank you. Before we proceed, I'll ask my fellow committee members if they have any interest in the matter or otherwise feel they cannot be impartial or fair in the hearing of this case. Seeing none, we'll proceed with the staff presentation.
This is case COA 138, 2020. Nope, we're out of order. Sorry about that. Here we are. Case COA 133, 2023 for 502 Polk Street in the Oakwood Historic District. The request is to remove rear steps, remove tree, construct rear deck and steps, construct attached 8-foot tall pergola and 7-foot tall privacy wall. And you can see here in the map the relationship of this property to the street and to the adjacent corner of Northeast. This is a view from Polk Street of the front of the house. And going down the side property line, a view from both sides. The right is the location of the proposed deck. This is a view looking back toward Polk Street in the patio area where the deck is proposed and that overall immediate area. A view to the rear property line, proximity to other buildings, and you can see the tree proposed for removal here on the left. And a view down that side driveway. This may be identified as an alley in some portions of the application, but in actuality it is privately owned property. And a detailed view of the rear area of the lot where new panels are proposed. The summary of staff concerns is supporting evidence for the privacy screen wall height and location, deck attachments not being neighbor-friendly construction, and some proposed finishes were not provided.
All right, the applicant, you have the floor for your presentation. You don't have to present anything, but if you want to say anything, you're certainly welcome to.
We don't really have anything other than questions. Or,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, sure.
Providing, these conditions.
All right. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in support of the application? Anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition to the case? Yes. Okay, please come forward. Please state your name.
Miller Hobart.
All right. Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
So, good evening, Mr. Chairman and committee members.
Just move the microphone close to your mouth, please. Thank you.
So, as I said, I'm Kay Miller Hobart. I live at 414 Northeast Street. The pictures you just saw, I was kind of on the purplish house. We're sort of behind the proposed project. The rear of the deck would abut up against our property line. So that's sort of, so that's our perspective where we're the 414. So I have lived at this address for over 30 years. I've been before the commission a few times, and we appreciate the work that you do and the work that this committee does. I have reviewed the application. I have reviewed the staff concerns. I have reviewed the guidelines. And I'm here to express concerns about one aspect of the project. My husband is traveling, otherwise he would be here as well. But we learned of this project when we got notice from the commission. And we read the application, we read the staff concerns, actually reached out to staff. At that point, I contacted our neighbors and asked them what the plans were to address the staff concerns, specifically with respect to the fence, and they said they were the wall on top of the deck, and they said, well, we're going to ask for it as in the plan. So I'm here to talk about my concerns. As you can see from the plan, I think it's around page 35 or 36, I've got hard copies, of the PDF. The proposed deck is going to be 5 feet off the ground. And then they propose putting a privacy wall on top of the deck, which would be 7 feet tall. And if you look at the sort of the mass of that wall, so you have basically a 12-foot tall, undifferentiated wall that would be 7 feet from our backyard. We have a number of concerns with that. We believe the mass and the scale is out of proportion. The wall also would not just encompass the portion of the deck, but it would extend an additional 3 feet over in front of the stairs that lead down. And now, the side of the deck that faces the street would have their traditional sort of post and rail configuration, and not this 7-foot tall privacy screen on top of the deck. So our concern is that from our perspective, we're not seeing that same post and rail, but we have basically a 15 by 12 foot, as I said, undifferentiated wall very close to our property. As noted in the staff report, the height is incongruous with the guidelines. At 12 feet, it's twice the typical height of what's been approved in Oakwood, and that is in guideline, I think, 1.48. Typically, privacy fences or rear or side-facing fences are approved if they are 6 feet or less in height. The guidelines talk about the fences are reviewed with respect to compatibility for design, pattern, scale, and spacing. And we believe that a lot of this wall is just simply not compatible with the design, pattern, or scale of the house. It's when you look at that page of the PDF that I referenced, it basically from our yard would obscure our view of the house. It also extends over past the side of the house and obscures the view of the bay window. According to guideline 3.1.1, decks should be constructed so character-defining features or details of the house are not obscured. That's not the case here. And in addition, guideline 3.1.6 states that, quote, ensure that new decks are sited and designed so they do not detract from the overall historic character of the building. So basically, we believe that just the mass of this wall and the placement and the design is incongruous with the guidelines and out of character with the special character of Oakwood. And I thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments in opposition to the application? I'll now recognize the applicant. If they would like to, you can provide a response to the comments in opposition.
Yeah, and we were coming into it kind of knowing just that the wall wouldn't be a thing. So we were planning on taking that out of the plans and just doing a pergola with the rail to the conditions and all that stuff.
Okay, and we can further delve into that in questions if the committee would like. So,
Okay. With the skirting, I just wanted to make sure that the skirting on the bottom wasn't like a condition. I didn't see that as a condition, but pretty sure it's just the wall above it.
okay, go ahead and stay right there, and we'll go ahead and move on to committee questions.
Can you help me understand? I'm looking at the right side full elevation with the pergola and horizontal skirting, and this is a new deck, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Why did you end it so it butts into the window?
Oh, that's my mistake of where the window sits. The window's actually, the deck will sit on
Proud of the
outside that
window? It's not running into the window.
The window, no, it's not. It was just my,
Okay.
CAD drawing was off a little bit.
Well, I was wondering why you didn't just take it on out to the
Yeah.
corner board.
Well, the corner one was where the tree was at. And then we were just going to, leave it at the side of the window. And we were keeping the tree. But then we were getting the tree removed. And then we're just going to keep it on the butt right there, not to go past it or anything.
So you're getting the tree removed.
Yeah.
But you you dimensioned the deck as if the tree was going to be there.
To a degree, yeah, and just keep it at the size it was, like the 20 by 12 that we originally had, instead of extending it out and costing more money for construction.
Okay. And then why are you not just kind of taking the structural post straight up and coming through the deck to become the rails?
I didn't read the guidelines that well. I was going through it. It's my first one reading through it.
Oh.
So I just missed that detail and was like, oh.
Are you
But
amenable
that's-
to fixing that? And
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've already worked on drawing that up.
Okay. And then I think there was some kind of, I thought I saw it in the elevation, an odd kind of spacing or something with the rails itself, or maybe I'm missing that. Maybe I messed that up. Yeah, it's the wood balustrades. It's on page 30. It looks like on the PDF that some of the verticals are on one side of the rail and some of them are on the other side of the rail.
Oh, like the railing detail?
Yeah.
That was just, that's just our standard rail detail. That's like, it's just saying like showing you where the 2x4 was, and then these will be on the outside, like the pickets will be on the outside. And it's just a place for the writing of 2x4 horizontal.
So that's that you.
The placement of the pickets does not
The placement of the
fluctuate.
pickets is on the front.
Right.
And those little like 2x4 where the writing is, they were just taken out for the writing.
Just for,
It's not
for clarity.
It's just some simplicity thing because we do so many decks that it's like like Durham and stuff. It's just Sorry about that.
No worries.
That's all my questions.
Do you have the skirting and the lattice because
Those were just multiple options.
do you have a preference, I guess?
I think it was horizontal skirting was the preference.
Okay.
It was just more like we've seen like a horizontal one, and then we saw a lattice one in there. So I just did drawings for both, depending on the approval.
And you mentioned taking out the wall, the screen wall, but you would still keep the pergola. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just
want to
just
make sure.
do matching railing all the way around.
Okay. And then with there could be a reason I didn't quite understand, and you build a lot more decks than I do, but I couldn't help but notice it feels like the stair is sort of orphaned off to the side of the deck. And was there any thought to? It seems like it's almost the exact same length as the 12-foot end. Could you have it engaged with the deck? Like, could you rotate it 90 degrees and have it kind of on the back of it? Because that would one that would give a little relief from the neighbor.
Yeah. So over to the right side, which I think we'd originally had that plan. And then we were like, the tree's gonna stay. So we could put the landing out front, and then the tree's now being removed. So the original plan was where the landing would come off where that right side.
Yeah, so now you'll line back up again if you put the stair, if you
Yeah.
pull the stair
If
around
it
the
was-
back, it'd be a much better solution.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just asking that as a question, but if that's not design direct, I think we should talk about it. But feels like that might look a little bit more permanent and like part of the house and gives some relief from the neighbor.
Absolutely.
So seems like could be a win all around. But no further questions.
I also noticed when, because of the structure coming up to become the posts, right now you've got the posts that are not lined up with that structure, but when you do that, that will all be one continuous line straight up. It's not going to be an offset scenario from the balustrade down to the structure of the panels in below.
Yeah, you mean like the pergola posts?
Can you pull up his page 30 on this one, or can you? I can show you what I'm talking about if I can just line it, point to it.
We're not able to pull that up.
Oh, okay. Okay, never mind. But it's just where the structure for the foundation.
Oh yeah, you talking about the pillar where the horizontal and then the deck starts.
And you've got the structure for the foundation coming up to the deck, and then right now the balustrades, the vertical supports for the rail are not in line with those. They're not modulated by the structure below. They're just on a completely separate dimension.
Yeah.
Can you get those to line up so that it's all coordinated so that your rail has a relationship with its base?
Yeah, you mean like
So you run the posts right through.
Run the right through, yeah.
Yeah, and have them become the.
And let that be your module for your.
Yeah.
Okay.
I see what you see, like spacing the footers with the top post.
Coordinate, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, same
Okay.
thing.
On the left facing,
Yeah.
full elevation,
Well,
yes.
all the way around.
All the way around, yeah.
Basically, just so the breaks in the skirting align with the
Breaks in the top rail.
yeah.
Gotcha.
That's it.
So to repeat out my understanding of where the application currently is, and please confirm I've got this right, that you've amended it to eliminate the screening wall, to specify horizontal skirting, to move the landing and stairs to the south side of the deck.
Yeah.
And to align the posts with the structure of the pergola above.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you thought about a color for the skirting?
I think it's just.
So we were thinking it's going to be the same color as the trim of the house, which is from the Benjamin Moore historic color palette. It's that gray outline that we have around our windows. So that would be the color of the skirting, the banisters. And we were still going to think about staining the wood just because it's on the ground and tends to flake a lot if you do paint decks.
Yep.
But we are amendable to painting that as well to make it match.
And staff has suggested those detail be approved by them as they get into it, yeah.
All right, any other questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, we'll close the evidentiary hearing, proceed with committee discussion. Y'all can have a seat. Thank you.
Okay. Now, understanding that, I was going to go and make a motion. Understanding the amendments are read into record, so I don't have to repeat those. I move that based on the application and testimony provided during the hearing, that we approve the application with the following conditions. One, any new post holes be dug manually in tree roots larger than 1-inch caliper that are encountered while digging shall receive a clean final cut while using tools designed for the purpose, such as loppers. 2, that all deck, pergola, and screening elements be painted or stained in colors compatible with the colors of the building. 3, that the deck, railing, pergola have neighbor-friendly construction, meaning that all posts are attached to the top of the deck rather than bolted to the side face of the deck. And the railings have the same appearance on both sides. That's 4, that the railing match the side elevation, blah, blah, blah. And a railing to match the side elevation be installed on the rear. Did that make any sense? Yes. 5, that the following material specifications be submitted to and approved by staff prior to issuance of the blue placard, revised drawings, A and B, scaled railing section detail. 6, the following materials and specifications be submitted to and approved by staff prior to the installation or construction. A, finish/color specifications for deck, pergola, and screening.
All right, motion's been made to approve the application subject to the stated conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The application will be final, or the approval will be final at next month's meeting when the minutes are approved and signed. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, and the last application for the evening is 515 Washington Street. This is COA 138, 2023, in the Glenwood, Brooklyn Historic District. Property owner is 515 Washington LLC. Is there an attorney present? Oh, excellent, good. All right, have the applicant come forward. And anyone else who will be presenting on this application? All right, ask you all to please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Great, thank you. Are there any committee members who have an interest in this matter or otherwise feel that they cannot be fair or impartial in the hearing of this case? Seeing none, we will proceed, and I'll recognize staff for their presentation.
So this is case COA 138, 2023 for 515 Washington Street, which is located in the Glenwood, Brooklyn Historic District. The nature of the request is to construct a primary structure, install a front walk, install driveway and parking area. You can see here the property is near the end of the dead-end side of Washington Street. It is actually the last property in the boundary of the historic district. 501 here is not included in the Glenwood, Brooklyn Historic District. This is a view of the property from Washington Street. The existing structure on the site was approved to be demolished several years ago, 2021, I think. This is a view of the east facade, looking back towards Washington Street. A view of the rear yard, and a view of the west yard looking towards Washington Street. The abbreviated summary of staff concerns is a need for additional supporting evidence for the setbacks, built mass, and area, height, the lack of a front porch and a front patio instead, the use of porthole windows and general fenestration pattern, and the typical additional materials and details that are provided prior to or during construction. And the applicant has provided some additional information and has a presentation as well.
All right, the applicant, you're recognized for your presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Tripp and members of the committee. Letitia Shapiro, attorney at Morningstar Law Group, 421 Fayetteville Street, Suite 530. I'm here on behalf of the applicant owner of 515 Washington LLC. I'm joined this evening by additional members of the applicant team, my colleague Molly Stewart of Morningstar Law Group, Katrina Goodwin, and David Bryson. As always, Colette has done a great job of describing the nature of the case, so I'm just going to provide some introductory comments, and then I will be calling Mr. David Bryson, who is going to provide some expert testimony associated with the findings that you all need to make. The property is located at 515 Washington Street on approximately 0.26 acres. It is currently an existing triplex in a severe state of decay. The applicant is proposing to construct a new two-story primary structure with a partial basement garage. New construction within the district requires a certificate of appropriateness, which is why we are before the committee this evening. The property is located in the Glenwood Brooklyn Historic Overlay District, and as you are aware, the Historic Development Commission may approve a certificate of appropriateness upon holding a quasi-judicial hearing pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 160D 947A and UDO Section 10-2-15D4. The applicant will demonstrate through the exhibits and testimony of Mr. David Bryson that the proposed new construction meets the requirements for approval as set forth in the statute, the ordinance, and the design guidelines for the Raleigh Historic District and landmarks as they pertain to the special character of the Glenwood Brooklyn Historic District. Some of the special characteristics noted in the guidelines, which Mr. Bryson will go into more detail, include several of the houses along Glenwood are a subset of Victorian architecture known as the Queen Anne style. Primary elements of the style found in the district include irregular massing and roof lines, turrets, and wraparound verandas. Secondary details include decorative window, sash, and classical allusions. The district also contains a fair number of stylistic hybrids that incorporate features from more than one style and mixing elements of a colonial revival, craftsman, and/or Victorian styles. Much of the new construction has sympathetic setbacks, and some are in the neo-Victorian or neo-craftsman style. Guideline 3.3, new construction of primary buildings, provides that the introduction of compatible but contemporary new construction can add depth and contribute interest in the district. In addition, new buildings should take design cues from but not copy historic buildings. The competent material and substantial evidence provided to you this evening will demonstrate congruity as required by North Carolina Statute 160D 947A and UDO Section 10-2-15D4. Through exhibits and expert testimony describing how the project is compatible within the district as it relates to the district as a whole, how it is compatible with adjacent buildings, and how it is compatible with surrounding buildings within the district. The applicant's proposed project complies with several relevant guidelines as they relate to the legal standards of the UDO and North Carolina statute. And at this time, I would like to invite Mr. David Bryson down to reintroduce himself and to just, for the benefit of the committee, provide your education experience and your role on the project.
Hi, I'm David Bryson. You guys, man, this is a hard gig, huh? It's like, my heart's out to you guys. Anyway, I'm the architect. I've been working with Katrina on some of her projects in the past, and I went to NC State, like many in the area. Yeah, graduated in '90, and I've been doing architectural work ever since. Till I figure out what I want to do for a living, I'm going to keep at it. And you guys are so overly qualified. I think the best thing I could do is just go right into your concerns and questions, because we've given you a plethora of information. I've spent a lot of time on Washington Street in the Glenwood area, but particularly this particular area. And I have a great deal of affection for Katrina and what she wants to do in the area. And so be my design be great or not, trying to make the client really happy with the design and give her the exact thing that she wants. But we also want to make sure that you guys are happy as well, because that's part of the whole job. So I'm here at your beck and call to try to answer questions on how we're trying to do that.
All right, we will have an opportunity to ask questions, but I will provide the applicant the opportunity to state anything more she would like to make in their presentation before we move to questions, and also ask if you wanted to tender this individual as an expert.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to tender Mr. Bryson as an expert in architecture and design for this case, and I will just welcome any questions at this time.
So moved.
I do have a question. Are you a licensed architect?
Yes, I have a license in Florida and in North Carolina. Okay. I've had the license in North Carolina since 1995.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak in support of the application? Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the case? Anyone with questions or who wish to make comments regarding the application? All right. Seeing none, we'll move to commissioner questions.
On the rear elevation, there's a stair dashed in. Is that inside the house?
Ask that question one more time. Sorry, sir.
On the rear elevation, there appears to be a stair. It's sort of dashed in. Is that supposed
That's just showing the stair that's on the
inside the house?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And if I knew how to operate this, I'd flip it to it. But,
I think you just scroll up or down on the wheel.
okay, yeah.
Question for staff. We see a garage here. I don't see any evidence of a driveway. It's an easement. But there's still some connection to the house in some fashion. Where is the edge of the district relative to the structure? Should we see some paving as part of the application?
It is the property line, and I believe it was included on one of the site plans.
Gotcha. Didn't see it. Thank you. Oh, there it is. Page 17.
So that driveway appears to connect to the neighboring parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Yeah, that's still in process.
okay?
The adjacent property that's not in the historic district, but is still in the same hands as the one that owns, that's going to be building the house. So that's a detail we're still working out, how that's going to work.
And I will also add that this being Glenwood, Brooklyn, site features beyond the front wall of the house in the rear, are not subject to COA review.
So since I missed other things, did I actually miss the specifications on how that driveway is paved, where it's the portion of it, at least, that's in the historic district? Because I don't see it. I didn't see it, but I could have looked right by it.
May I respond to that?
Yeah. Yes.
Molly Stewart, Morningstar Law Group. My apologies. We do have a presentation to walk through with the design. Mr. Bryson can walk you through this design. Just
Sure.
It's been a while since I've been in front of it's been since 2008, so I'm kind of, and at the time it was done, staff went through it, and so this is a little different.
Yes.
So my apologies. I'm probably causing a big hiccup here.
No, not at all. We'll allow you to make your presentation.
Okay, so you guys see, this is the front elevation. Obviously, this is probably not rocket science. This is easy to figure out, but it is two-story. What's a little deceptive is the left side of the entryway is actually in the street, but the center above the entryway as well as the right sets back, and then the part that has the oculus window is actually pretty far back and actually wouldn't be visible if you walk down the street. So this being an elevation, of course, it plays with your eyes. And the rear elevation, I've already covered the stair, and then the rear living room, which is at the back of the property. The corner at the master bedroom actually has a balcony, which is on the back corner of the property. And this is the side facing away from 501 Washington. It's facing towards the west. And this again shows you the lower part is one story all the way across, and the upper two-story part actually sits back over that entryway. And then this is the side that faces her other property at 501, and it has the bedrooms, and then it has a corner broken away with a balcony. As I said before, the first floor hasn't been completely worked out as far as how the garage is accessed, but basically it's a garage that leads up to the main floor, and then the main floor itself is fairly traditional in its setup with the front porch. And I know that was one of the staff comments had to do with whether or not it has a front porch covered or if it's a not covered front porch. So I think that might be a question you guys come up with later. And then this shows the second story. So there again, when you're in Washington Street looking at the house itself, the main massing of the house, since it runs front to back, the house doesn't have a lot of mass as you look at it because only the left side has a 2-story section. And this shows the roof plan, of course, for the second story. These are some of the houses that we utilize for inspiration when thinking about how her new house is going to sit in context within the fabric of Washington Street. To be honest, Washington Street itself, any of you guys that are intimate with the street know that there's a small commercial building right at Glenwood, and then there's some apartments that are kind of down in a ravine, and then the right side of the street has a nice row of, people would lovingly say bungalows, but they're sort of like just factory homes, and then on the left side there's a home, and then there's an apartment building, a small 1-story apartment, and then there's more of a bungalow that sits behind it, and then across from 501, and then there's a new house all the way at the end near the railroad tracks. So we had to kind of reach out a little bit beyond Washington Street to get some ideas about the context of the historic district as a whole, in lieu of just Washington Street being its only inspiration. So I think, did I walk through it? Okay.
Any questions from the committee?
Why did you need to go beyond Washington Street?
Well, like I said, you're familiar with Washington Street?
Yeah, I live in the neighborhood.
Yeah, you live in the neighborhood. Well, because Washington Street, it does have architectural examples of homes. They're small. Most of them probably 2, maybe 3-bedroom when they're built with a 1 bath. I mean, very typical of the time period. But Washington Street itself, over the years, at some point was kind of gutted.
Well, I'm asking more in terms of the architectural character of that street and the houses that are on it, and they are very much craftsmen.
Yeah. I mean, craftsman as in...
architectural style.
Let me pull back to the house that she's...
I mean, the house that's being torn down is lovely. I'm sorry it's going. I'm just hurt that it's going. But, that's here or there. But that is very typical of the character of this area of the neighborhood. And it's size and there are 2-story craftsmen, so the idea of doing the concept of a craftsman style home that would fit within the character and would be in somewhat loving homage to this one that's being torn down would seem very appropriate. I'm just trying to get at why this was not important or discounted, or you had to reach out beyond it to do what you're doing.
Well, the house itself, due to its condition, was...
Oh, I understand that. No, that's a done deal. It's been already decided.
And yeah, it's got add-on brackets on the dormer, and it has brackets on the side eaves. But other than that, the front porch columns are 4x4 post. It's just shiplap. It has no craftsman style to it beyond the brackets that were added.
Well, the windows have been boarded up and that kind of stuff. So a lot of that was in the detail of the original before it got boarded up, and you can't see it anymore, unfortunately. But also looking down the block, there are other examples of, simplicity is part of the craftsman character, and a front porch, a covered front porch that really stretches its and engages the site is part of that character. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of how your design kind of works within that framework that is so immediate and right next door?
Well, as far as the porch? Is that what
all the elements, and the whole character of, how. I'm just trying to get at how do you see what you're doing here fitting within the neighborhood of that immediate context without having to, because when you said you had to go outside of this to do what you're doing, my question is why? Why did you have to go outside? I mean, because you've got a wonderful context there that you can pull from that's right near you.
You have a little bit of one, but a good part of Washington Street is not what Washington Street was 50 years ago. It's been gutted. That's why I couldn't take cues from the commercial building on the corner. I couldn't take cues from the apartment building that sits in the ravine.
And nor should you. None of them are contributing.
Or the apartments or
none of those are
townhouses that sit on the
contributing.
street.
I'm
Right.
asking for
So
ones
what
that
I'm
would
saying
contributing.
is, right, but you have to take the historic district in context, not just the 6 houses on Washington Street.
Agreed.
So,
but they are the most immediate, and you made a very strong point to discount them, and I'm just wondering why they are discounted.
they weren't discounted.
Well, when you say you didn't use them at all, help me understand.
Like when I was telling you about why the 2-story portion of the house doesn't front the entire Washington Street, because I wanted to make sure the massing was less, like the other houses on the street. We knew that the square footage was going to be more than when these houses were first built. I mean, probably they were all about 1,200 square foot max, 1 bathroom, 3 bedroom, right? That was a typical. So I knew that in order to meet the client's requests, I'd have a greater square footage footprint, but I wanted to make sure where it met the street, where Washington Street and all the other buildings that face Washington Street, it had a similar presence. So I started from the railroad tracks and I went all the way to Glenwood Avenue, and I looked at all of the massing of all the buildings, whether you like them or not, whether they're original homes or they're not. It's part of the character of Washington Street. And I tried to make this residence not be any more overpowering or any less powering than any other structure. So while, yes, this simplistic, as you call it, craftsman style may not have the same elements, I tried to grab the character and the scale so that I can incorporate what the client wants as well as make something that fits within the fabric of the street.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Looking at your examples that are justifying the massing in the front of the house, I'm noting that the commonality in the examples for 2-story structures is that there's a roof form that's breaking the mass of the front elevation and changing the proportion of the house to something that's a little more horizontal. And I'm seeing the design not having something that's breaking that. I'm seeing window forms where the windows are aligned first floor to second floor to attic if there's an attic dormer. And I'm also seeing, I'm only seeing orthogonal shaped windows in terms of things. And these are all elements that would contribute to the overall character of the house, which is I'm bringing up these individual things. Whereas the design, what's happening on the second floor is out of line with what's happening on the first floor. We're presenting a pretty monolithic wall on the front, which tends to make this thing feel taller. And of course, in the staff notes, they noted the apparent absence of what is functionally a porch, which is very much part of the character of the district. And I'm having troubles in my mind getting to not incongruous because I'm not seeing evidence that what is there is congruous with the character of the district based on these difference details, which are pretty striking. And I'm looking at only the evidence presented here. I'm not even pulling from what it's sort of like to walk through the neighborhood, but what I'm seeing before me. And if you go further in the neighborhood, I think you'll find that that's pretty consistent. You've got that broken plane breaking the front elevation, so it reduces the apparent mass.
Which is part of the craftsman style.
Yeah. Yeah, very much. I think if we had more evidence that would support the lack of roof, that I could get to yes easier. Sorry, Jordan.
Is the front entrance, is it stucco? Is it concrete? Is the entire basement, for lack of a better word, just like a parge coat over block.
Yes, that was the intent, was it would be a parge system like a stucco system.
I see. And the same for the entry.
Yes.
I mean, maybe it wouldn't be block construction, but some sort of stucco, exterior
Probably,
stucco.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I haven't delved into that exact detail, but yes, it's definitely a stucco finish appearance.
And where we're going with these questions, as Curtis was saying, is we would probably ask you to provide some evidence of those being within the district and how they are congruous within the district. That might be possible. It might not. A few that I had written down that some of them fellow commissioners already covered, but I think we all over town we see parge coat foundations. Doesn't necessarily feel congruous in this particular district. I could be wrong. I don't have evidence.
You're correct.
I don't have evidence to see that. So having evidence would help us, support your case. The roof pitch seems very slight to me. You called out 4 and 12, and with the examples that are provided, they look generally steeper. I would just like to see other, and then, the evidence you're providing is not for you to go up on someone's roof and try to measure it. But we need to have some, you provided several examples of the context, but we need the evidence to relate to certain aspects that you're trying to provide. I hope this makes sense.
Yes, it does.
So things like the round window, I appreciated you. I did not catch when I was reviewing the application that's actually on the stair tower and setback. I'd love to have some sort of evidence of that, round or otherwise, just something that deviates from largely vertical or portrait orientation windows, which is just as a quick scan of the evidence provided seems to be dominant.
He's shown that one, and again, those are the larger houses on Glenwood.
Yep. And then there's a couple of other kind of nitpicky features, but even like the casing around the windows, the head casing extending over, looks like it hangs over about 6 inches beyond the side casings. That seems, I'm nitpicking, but that seems different from most of the examples where typically it's like a 4.5 or 5 inch casing that kind of squares up. I'd just like to see evidence that supports the design features, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, as I see it right now, it's just a mixture of elements that you've pulled from various houses that are in the district, but part of the character of the district is how those elements are ordered together, i.e. windows have a tendency to align with one another on the second and first floors. Paired windows, as you've shown, don't. The one next to the front door, the one to the left of that, there's a lot of it's a collection of elements, but how they are ordered is what brings it into the character of the district more than just the shape or the frame of that specific element. I mean, it's almost like a Mr. Potato Head where you can, pick and do different pieces and change the character, but it's about the structure of the and proportions of the elements versus just the elements themselves.
Yeah. As you're kind of looking at this and providing additional evidence, I'd suggest you go to 3.3 of the guidelines, and there's a page, the last page in the group, page 70, where it's showing you, it's giving you a little formula for how to evaluate the proportions. And one of the things I'm doing when I'm up here looking at this is I'm I'm kind of using this kind of method of looking at the proportions of the evidence that's provided versus the proportions of the proposed work. And they're not congruous. Now, as we said on an earlier case, everything doesn't have to be matchy-matchy, and it's a new structure, so we do want it to read as a new structure. But it, on balance, needs to sort of, the word is not incongruous with the neighborhood, and that's in the state statute, so that's why we're using this awkward phrase all the time. But that would be the key to getting to the other side of this. And I would go so far also as to look at the proportion of the windows. You have some very narrow windows here and some slightly wider windows here. And when I look at all the evidence, I'm seeing ones that are more in the slightly wider proportion, 1/1s, typically. So I think that's something else we'd be looking for to get to yes. I went through the application again. I don't see anything about the driveway or its construction or even any kind of detail on that. So I'd ask you come back with a little just information on what it is. Is it an asphalt paved driveway? Is it 2 tracks with some grass between? What is it? And how is that congruous with the other driveways in the district, which I think are pretty few and far between. But I think we'd want to look to see some of that. And weirdly enough, we don't care about the east half of the driveway. We care about the west half because the west half is in the district and the east half is not. But I assume it's going to be symmetrical.
We only care about half your driveway.
Isn't that crazy?
Funny. That's cute.
On the front facade, the front bedroom, are those Juliet balconies on the windows? Are those intended to be sort of Juliet balconies? I see. Okay. No more questions from me.
Additional questions from the committee?
And just a clarification, is the portico entrance, is that another stucco material? The entrance?
Yeah, the part that's on the screen where the front door is.
Yeah, I challenge that, but I just want to clarify. Thank you.
And similarly, we haven't seen a structure with a mix of materials like that in the evidence.
Are you talking about at the door itself?
Yeah, surrounding the door and the columns.
No, that would all be wood. If you can see between the stucco and the door itself, it goes back to the shiplap.
I'm asking about the stucco.
Yeah,
the 2 columns and the arch element with that the door is set into, that's stucco, correct?
Where it's all the dots on the drawing.
All the dots on the drawing, that's not stucco?
No, it's like I changed that, and I didn't want him to have to redraw it.
Okay.
And,
So what is it?
To what?
What is it?
So, no, it'd be like that smooth wood fascia.
Like a hardy panel?
I don't know, because I'm not a...
Could be painted wood trim. I mean, if we're leading the witness,
Well, I would think it's too big to, I would think it would be a panelized something or other.
Yeah, David had drawn it as obviously the foundation, and which, if there's a problem, there's a lot of stuff that I am willing to do what you want to. The foundation, if it needs to be brick, it can be brick, I had already wanted that, I just didn't want him to have to redraw it, and I think I just told him about it in a conversation one day, and so it's obviously communication about that. There are things like I'm happy to make a cover over the front porch because it's already a porch, it's just not covered, and, put the columns there. Truthfully, whatever it takes for me to get a home.
Well, maybe we suggest that they be referred to DRAC.
Yes, thank you.
So that DRAC can work with them.
Yes, because I think this requires more than just adjusting a few.
I'll recognize staff. They have a comment.
Anyone who is interested is able to request to attend DRAC, but due to recent guidance from the city attorneys, I would not say that you can demand or...
We can't order it.
No,
Yes.
No, but I think it'd be helpful.
But I think it would be very helpful because it would help them get. We could defer this, and I think that at the next one, if they have the opportunity to visit with DRAC about this, a lot of the elements or a lot of the issues that we're bringing up would be resolved enough to where we could get it to approve, or at least I would.
I think the committee can suggest it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
and
That's
it-
what
it has
all
been-
I'm doing.
It has
is
been
suggest it.
suggested.
Yeah.
And just, so you know, they'll work with you on the design and on how you document it to get it through really quick, cleanly next time. Because we don't want you to have to keep coming back. We want to get this done for you. Yeah.
And I also think that there's bigger issues than just a window here and there or a material change or something like that. I think we have to understand the structural relationship of the elements to each other, and that's a bigger picture item than what we can solve with just a few changes.
So there's a question for staff. I think usually the submission deadline for next month is coming up pretty fast.
Yes.
Yeah, so probably, I mean, it sounds like the general consensus of the committee is deferral. We can defer to another month out. We don't have to do it to next month. We could do to.
That is probably preferable for the applicant and the applicant's architect.
Yes.
We would not want him to, it would be essentially like a week and a half from now, the deadline for the next month.
So asking the applicant, would you prefer January or can we do?
I just want to add that the 2024 DRAC schedule, I'm not sure that that's been established yet either. At least in 2023, the first DRAC committee meeting was held at the very end of the month on January 30th this year. So the next opportunity to attend DRAC may not come prior to the January meeting.
So could we just defer it to a future meeting and let them work with you to find the right meeting that it'll fit into?
Well,
I think I'd like to ask the applicant what they prefer.
Okay, yeah, if they're okay with going to DRAC first.
And the preference is to have an exact
Yes,
meeting
a
date.
date certain.
Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
DRAC?
It's a good question. When you have acronyms just thrown at you.
So we'll take this one as staff. Design Review Advisory Committee is what that stands for. It's made up of architects and designers, largely former COA committee members that are familiar with the design guidelines and the special character of each of the local historic districts. So they have a lot of experience with the process. It's 30 minutes of free design advice. You can ask them questions, they can offer suggestions, you can kick things around. Whereas with this committee, they really have to be offered a design to, respond to. They can't sit here. It's called committee by design or design by committee.
Yep.
That they can't participate in that kind of back and forth brainstorming the way that the DRAC folks could.
And also
You're
anything.
not required to take their suggestions either.
Right,
It
that's what I
won't
was
get
about to
reported
say.
out.
We don't even know that you've been there, which is why I asked. Right?
Yeah, and I appreciate, I mean, it sounds like helpful.
It's
you know,
phenomenally useful.
Phenomenally helpful. Phenomenally helpful.
My big issue is that the time, the money.
Yep.
I have a construction loan that's starting. So, like I've got that year.
Yep.
That the clock's ticking, and that I close on that on Tuesday. So it's, timing is very crucial to me.
Yes.
Right now. So I'd rather not have anything that delays if we can possibly have it happen sooner.
I can't see getting to approval from my point of view with where we are currently because there's so many holes.
Yeah.
So could you tell me though what the sticking points are?
Well, as my personal sticking points are that it needs, I'm going to be blunt, it needs to be redesigned because of the relationship of the elements to each other, as well as the specific elements that you're choosing and some of the materials that you're choosing. I question them very much relative to the congruity of the neighborhood, and not just Washington Street, to the neighborhood. I think, and again, why I really want to encourage you, please visit with DRAC, please, because it will be the most time-effective way, I think, you can get to approval through us than trying, because there's no way that we can kind of fix this right now. At least I can't, and maybe the others can't. I can't. It's going to take more study than that. And I think DRAC will push that study beautifully so that the next time you come, boom, it'll be a slam dunk.
Yeah.
My fear is that if you don't do that, you come back, it may get dragged out even longer. At least from my perspective. Now they may buy into it, but I just know I'm just trying to give you advice based on the process as I understand it and how it has helped others in the past.
Yeah, and for us to get to yes, we need to be able to look at the evidence that you're presenting and then look at the design and say, yeah, those are compatible. They're very similar in a lot of ways. And when there's a commonality in the elements of the evidence, like the break in the first floor elevation, with his little roof piece or something else, that becomes something you start looking for because, well, that's a good portion of the character of the district. The front porch relation to the street is a major element of that nature of that district. Those are all things that we're looking for, and the window proportions. We've had cases here where people who have offered up a glazing area that's similar to a single homogeneous glazing area that's similar to two side-by-side windows, and what got them to the other side of no to yes was a break in that glazing, so that there is a bit of molding there. That's all.
The other thing that's lovely about DRAC is that it is comprised of architects who have been on this committee before and are very well versed and are almost specialists in historic districts themselves in terms of design. You're getting that, and that's a free session.
Yeah.
So I think I would jump on it in a second.
I'm going to suggest that we move to defer the application to the February COA meeting, and if the applicant desires that they need more time, then the application can be pushed further back. So I'm going to if anyone has any comments or discussions on that proposed motion, any objections, I'll go ahead and move to defer the application to the February 2024 COA meeting. Motion is made. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. None. None heard, so the motion carries unanimously. Thank you for the work you've put into the application. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Say aye? Oh, is it aye? Oh, okay.
All right, moving on. Committee discussion. Is there any?
Yeah, I have one thing. First, sorry for being late. Second, we've talked about this kind of at the business meeting and various other places. 423 South Blunt. We've talked about how Prince Hall as a district is sort of disappearing, death by 1,000 cuts. I was looking at the GIS earlier. It appears that Shaw's no longer in it.
That rezoning was approved by City Council.
Right, so, I didn't mention it during that case, but, at this point, referring to SD or any of the other buildings on Shaw's campus are no longer part of the district, so.
Right, it's narrowed the options.
It's not even a thing that you can.
Right.
So, being that it is partially anyway, very much downtown, and what people want to build in downtown is taller than what is currently there by a lot. I think, I don't know what the path forward is, but we don't want people to do an end around this committee, which is probably what's unfortunately going to happen with this hotel, in that they go before zoning to get removed from the district so that they can build the skyscraper or 10, 8-story plus thing that they want to build, because there's no way for us to evaluate buildings of that scale in the district. They're just not part of the fabric, and they never have been, but that is what is going to happen in that district. So it's a hard circle to square, and I'm ready to go home. I'm in no way suggesting that we try it here, but it's untenable that every time someone wants to build something taller than, at this point, the Masonic Lodge is pretty much the tallest thing left.
Well,
so it's sort of like, how do we get people to come through this committee in a way that they think that there's a possibility that they'll have a positive outcome, right?
Well, in my opinion, we don't deny the application, which I'm questioning why you voted to do that.
They wanted denial. I think, to me,
Well, but
it was clear to me that
we're the decision makers.
He wanted the 12-story thing to look the way that it looked and to pass through the committee, or he wanted us to deny it so that he could go to zoning. I mean, those were the options
and
that
we
they
didn't force
presented.
his hand to do better and step up to the plate. We could have done that.
We could defer it, but it wouldn't, like I said, it wouldn't actually force him to come back. He could just withdraw his application.
Which is what I suspect would
Which
happen.
is,
Yeah.
you know, again, like he wanted a specific outcome, I think, and if he didn't get that, then he wanted to just go back to zoning.
You know, on the death of Prince Hall, I attended, God, I don't even know the name of the presentation, but Mary Ruffin's presentation about architectural assets in the African American community in Raleigh. And I was absolutely blown away by how many people showed up in support of it from the community and how jazzed they were about doing something about this. So I have hope, but I don't know that it'll win over the development community in Prince Hall is my big worry at this point.
Well, and we're never going to win over the development community if we give them an out, and denying the things, it gives them an out.
Well, John, I think from my perspective, the reality is that they already have an out, and that is the zoning process. The out is to skip this whole COA body and just go straight to zoning and get removed from the Prince Hall Overlay District,
Which is what a number
they
of
can
people
do
have done, yeah.
whether they see us or not.
Yeah.
So what I'm proposing, or I'm at least trying to, is that there be a way or an incentive of some sort for them to actually come and sit before us and believe that they could get a tall building through here. Because, you know,
So we can offer a few comments to that as staff. I'll say that filing a rezoning request does not automatically gain an applicant approval of that request. So, you know, if this COA applicant chooses to pick up their pending rezoning application, which is very likely, you know, we'll just have to see which way that goes, city council decision. Some of those requests have been approved in the past, some have not, typically depends on the makeup of council. And that's out of our control from the COA committee purview. In regards to Prince Hall, we are currently working on property owner outreach in that district to try to gauge where people are at on the future of that district. Death by 1,000 cuts is happening, and City Council has directed us to at least temperature check the folks that own property there now. So we're working on that. We won't really have conclusive results from that outreach until the end of January when we hold our next Prince Hall HOD ad hoc committee meeting. Pretty low response rate overall so far. We're just making a final push. I think that's to be expected. So again, what happens with that district in terms of its existence would be a rezoning discussion with City Council. And of course, the RHDC, it would start at the regular RHDC meeting. And in terms of what the COA committee could do to encourage applicants to attempt to go through this process, I think we've seen tonight that our existing design guidelines and the special character essay for Prince Hall largely tie the committee's hands in terms of how they can review height of that scale. So that's where we are. It's not a solution necessarily. Some potential ways forward would be something that's not a short-term solution, which is reconsidering the design guidelines. They get amended periodically, and when that comes up again, and we're hoping that that is soon because we've identified lots of holes as staff, that could be something that gets considered in how we word those guidelines and, you know, guide ourselves on how we're allowed to make these judgment calls. Other than that, there's not much that you can do with the fact that they couldn't build, they didn't have the technology to build 13 stories in 1890. Well, that is a total lie. Yes, they did. And they did it
Yeah.
along Fayetteville Street.
Just not down here.
They just didn't develop this wide out yet. I don't know that answers your question, but design guideline amendment is something that we could consider.
And I'm a short-termer here, right? But one of the things I would strongly suggest is that when we see rezoning requests come through, as a commission, we don't accept on its face what comes from planning, that we go through the comprehensive plan and the city policies in it, and we enumerate them, and we enumerate how what's coming in is congruous and incongruous with those policies. Because I think we're seeing a lot of stuff come through from planning where they're kind of skipping across the incongruities and highlighting the congruities.
So in the interest of this
Yeah.
meeting being as long as it's been,
Yeah,
and
plenty
that
long.
being a zoning discussion
Yep.
rather than the COA review, if that's something you all want to talk about at the November meeting next week, you could bring it up for discussion. We don't have a ton on the, we do have another COA meeting Tuesday night, but our regular meeting with the full commission.
We have 2 meetings that day.
Yeah.
We do. Do not forget. We'll be back here next Tuesday night.
Right.
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So next Tuesday morning with the full commission, we can talk about the zoning aspects some more if y'all would like to. I would encourage us to steer away from that for tonight.
Yeah.
And I'd also encourage us, we got a lot of feedback, or I have gotten a lot of feedback at least, about how difficult it is to be in a historic district. And one thing they cite is just the series of submissions that need to go through to get to permitting. And maybe this is also a full commission thing, so you can tell me to shut up for now. But I am wondering if there would be a way that an application can submit and once, which starts it on the COA path and then follows through to zoning or whatever permitting it needs, so it's not multiple submissions.
Oh, that's
We've been deferring a lot in the past few months.
Yeah.
And it creates a larger agenda and more work for you all. And
yeah.
And
Well, but I think, you know,
I'm not saying that's a
all,
bad thing,
well,
it's just-
to me, that just says we're being thoughtful.
Well, yes, and I was kind of getting at, if there's a way to like help the applicant on the front end to try
Right.
to avoid deferral.
And I would think I think we can take that as a symptom of a hole in the education.
Yeah,
of
like the
public.
architects and the attorneys who are presenting cases to us are
Yeah.
falling short.
Yeah.
Well, we
that's-
had
that's
like
just it.
2 opposite ends of the spectrum tonight, right? We had Ashley, she's in here
Yeah.
every month. She
Right.
gets it right pretty much 100% of the time. And then we had another person who's just like, I've never done this before. I didn't even know what to turn in. There's
Right.
just like a wide, like you said, there's a wide gap in education about the process. And
Well, and, you know, and
Let me suggest that we continue this
Sure, yeah,
conversation Tuesday morning.
Yes.
I think it's a great thing to bring up.
Yeah.
But
Thank-
we've
and thank
been
you.
here almost 4 hours. So that objection, I move to adjourn. So moved.
So moved.
All
Thank
right.
you.